All right, folks, we are back. I've called the meeting to order. Again, in addition to Vice Chair Bailey, Commissioner Washington, Commissioner Dorner, we are also joined by Commissioner Giraldo. We have a full complement here. I'm Chair Shapiro. And on to the business at hand. For the public, please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration for all submission of materials and exhibits was 12 noon of the Tuesday before this planning board meeting. Registered speakers may join the meeting with the link provided in the email provided by the planning board office or listen by phone by utilizing the call-in number provided in the email. And of course, anyone may tune in to watch the planning board meeting via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record, you may use our online web form, which you see referenced on the screen before you. In addition to the commissioners, we are joined by our planning director, Director Chuckley. We have Delisa Coleman, our associate general counsel, with us. Jessica Jones, planning board administrator. Joe Parsons, our senior technical hearing writer. James Hunt, the division chief for the development review division, is joining us as well, and staff members Kenneth Flanagan and Ryan Cron, who are assisting us with technology behind the scenes. Thanks to everybody. So let's move to the second item on our agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yep. Before you start today, there are two items that we're advertising on the screen, and I would just like to emphasize those. They're just the Pillars Celebrating and Saluting. It's one of the highlights that I always attend that event. And I guess it's because I'm close to that age, but it really is one of the outstanding things that we do with the planning board, the Park and Rec. And so I would like to highlight that and suggest that anyone listening, if you're available to, and you know anyone 100 or in those upper ages, please refer them so that we can honor them this year. And the second one is we have an outstanding Black History activity, a number of Black History Month activities coming up that are always outstanding. So those two items I certainly would suggest, and they're all very personal to me. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Park and Recs for the outstanding job that they're doing in those two categories.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. It's very helpful, and I appreciate it. And I did have the opportunity to participate in the centenarian celebration last year, and it is a wonderful event, truly, truly.
Oh, they can dance better than you can.
Well, there's a long list of people who can do that. And in terms of Black History Month, we have I don't even know how many different events that we are having throughout the county in different ways, shapes, and forms. So there's lots to participate in, and thank you for flagging that for us and for the residents of the county. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll move to the item 2 on our agenda, and I would look for a motion to approve the draft minutes of January 12, 2022. 2023, I think that would be actually.
Motion to approve, draft minutes.
Second.
Got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, 5-0. We'll now move on to item 3B. We are going to be going into executive session, and let me read this into the record. Addition to Piscataway Creek Stream Valley Park, pursuant to the general provisions articles of the Annotated Code of Maryland, Article 3-305, subsection B3, to discuss acquisition of real property for a public purpose and matters related thereto, and for the purpose of protecting the Commission's negotiating position and Cheverly Town Park, pursuant to the general provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, Article 3-305, subsections B3, to discuss acquisition of real property for a public purpose and matters related thereto, and for the purpose of protecting the Commission's negotiating position. That's the closing statement that I'm reading into the record, and I would look for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Giraldo, second by Vice Chair Bailey. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, 5-0. We'll go into executive session, and for the public, I imagine that this will take us about maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then we will be back in public session. 10 minutes, actually. I was corrected. It should probably only take us about 10 minutes, and then we'll be back in open session. So with that, commissioners, I will see you all in closed session in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're all here. We're back in open session. Ms. Coleman, are you on the line?
Apologies, Chair. Yes, I'm here.
Tell me exactly what I need to say related to the closed session, and only you. So we're back in open session. What do I need to say related to the discussion that had and any action-ish items we took?
Simply, Chair, you need to inform the public that in closed session, you gave direction to staff.
Okay. I will inform the public that in executive session, we gave direction to staff on the items that were described in the agenda, and I will leave it at that. Good enough? Okay, great. So we're now on item 3C, which actually building on Vice Chair Bailey's, what she noted before under the commissioner items. This is a Parks and Recreation item, celebration and honoring of African American heritage during Black History Month. We have a staff presentation, Ms. Fanning and Mr. Doster, yes. And there's no action needed on this. This is a briefing, but I'm going to turn it over to staff and look forward to the briefing. Director Tyler, should I start with you?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board, Madam Vice Chair. No, we can go right to Ms. Fanning, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Well,
Ms.
thank you.
Fanning, good to see you. Take it away.
Good to see you. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this morning. And I just want to thank Vice Chair Bailey again for her kind words. As we shared with you last year, our commitment to Black history absolutely goes year round. And in fact, we're expanding and strengthening our interpretation across all of our historic sites to be much more inclusive. And of course, key to this effort is Dr. Dennis Doster, whose title is Black History Program Manager, but whose impact that certainly does not just do justice to his impact in this county, in this region, or indeed across the country. So I will just turn it over to Dr. Dennis Doster.
Good morning.
Dr. Doster, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I feel like my Commissioner Bailey took my presentation, so I don't have to say much. But thank you all for allowing me to be before you just briefly this morning, just to, as always, come this time of year to share a little bit about what the department is doing for Black History Month. And so as you see with the title slide, from performances to history lessons to tours. So we've got a little bit of everything for people of all ages throughout the month of February 2023. So if you go to the next slide, it shows that our the annual theme, as always, we try to do some programming at least in accordance with the annual theme, which is set by the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And so for 2023, the theme is Black Resistance. They have a great write-up on their website, asalh.org, where you can really read in great detail about the full history of Black resistance and that theme. And so taking off that theme, if you go to the next slide, our annual exhibition, which is put together by the MNC PPC Black History Program, which will be on view at Montpelier Art Center for February and March, is entitled Black Resistance: Stories from Prince George's County. And so in that exhibition, we're moving from the period of enslavement up to the present, highlighting a number of different stories of Black resistance that come from Prince George's County. And so right here on this slide, you see an image of students from Bowie State University right prior to them being arrested at the State House in Annapolis while they were protesting the inequitable conditions at Bowie State University. And so that's just one of the many stories that will be told in our exhibition this year at Montpelier Arts Center. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see information about our opening reception, which is always a great event. So that opening reception will be, of course, at Montpelier Arts Center on Sunday, February 5th from 2 to 5 p.m. Of course, in addition to that, a centerpiece of that date is always the unveiling of our annual Black History Month poster, which was created and has been created for the past, I guess, 4 or 5 years now by students who participate in our annual Black History Program Visual Arts Summer Internship, where they learn about this theme during an intense 4 to 5 week session and then create artwork based on the theme. So we'll have that poster unveiling on that date, Sunday, February 5th. And so I guess if you move to the next slide, I'll just close out with highlighting a few of the events. And so we have a number of events, like I said, throughout the month at a variety of different places, from our community centers to our historic sites and museums and art centers. And so these are just a few of the ones, just to give you all a little bit of a tease of what is available during the month of February. And so here we have a lecture from Caleb Smith, our own Prince George's County resident, who's the youngest glider pilot in the nation. And so he'll be giving a talk and you'll get to meet him at the College Park Aviation Museum on Saturday, February 18th from 10 to 1. Next.
I'm sorry, Dr. Doster, how old is he?
That is a good question. I believe he is
If he's not 16.
12 or something, I think. 13.
Actually featured in a national news segment some time ago, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, he was featured. I'm excited about this program. That's one of the ones I wanted to tease you all with, because he's just amazing what he's done. He's been featured in our local news and the national news. He got some special commendation from the Air Force. And so it'll be an exciting time to really just learn about what he's doing and lift up what great young people in Prince George's County are doing, because so often we don't hear these stories. And so that's a great story for us to be able to experience.
Thank you for that.
The next slide is an exhibition that's taking place at Darnell's Chance House Museum during the entire month of February. And it's a quilt exhibition with a textile artist by the name of Vera Hall, who's pictured here. And so you'll be able to see that exhibition throughout the month of February. Next slide. And so this is part of an ongoing partnership between our Arts and Cultural Heritage Division with the Coalition for African Americans in the Performing Arts. And so this is a program that they will be partnering with them to highlight 2 Black classical musicians, Philippa Duke Schuyler, who's an African-American pianist, and Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who was a Black British composer. And so that concert will be on Sunday, February 19th at 4 p.m. at Montpelier Arts Center. Next. Our archaeology office within the Natural and Historic Resources Division will be doing an event, Archaeology Lab Experience, where they'll be exposing people of all ages to what they do and how archaeology plays an important role in African American history, and particularly history that relates to the theme of Black resistance. And so that'll be on Saturday, February 25th, 11 to 2, and it will be held at the Ridgely Rosenwald School. Next. Music, we all love music, and we all love great classic soul music. And so there's a tribute to the music of Marvin Gaye, and it will be led by a favorite musical group in our area and for the Department of Parks and Recreation, the Bryn Core All-Stars Band. And so that will be Saturday, February 25th at 8 p.m. at the Harmony Hall Arts Center. And then I think this is my last slide, our last event slide. So Sunday, February 26th at 4 p.m., the Heritage Signature Chorale under the leadership of the maestro Stanley Thurston will be performing at Prince George's Public Playhouse. They are well known for choral music and for interpreting African-American choral music and composers. And so you don't want to miss that, Prince George's Public Playhouse on Sunday, February 26th. And so, as I said, as we move to the last slide, this is just a taste of some of the events. And so for the complete listing, you can go to our website, blackhistory.pgparks.com. And I guess I'll open up if there are any questions or comments. And then if not, I will thank you all for your time.
You have certainly whet our appetite for the month of February. This is fabulous, fabulous stuff. Commissioners, any questions for Dr. Doster?
So no questions, just exciting about the programming lineup. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No questions.
Right.
Outstanding.
So yes,
Indeed.
so thank you all for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to both of you, Director Tyler. Thanks to your team for this presentation. All right, let's move on to the next item. We have this is also a Parks and Rec item. This is item 3D. This actually is an action item. There's a budget request for us. I'll turn it over to Director Tyler. The Saturday School Enrichment Program or Saturday School Program, and take it away.
Yes,
I
good
think
morning.
Ms. Ramos is going to be speaking as well as Director Tyler.
That is correct. And I'm going to be, in the essence of time, I'm going to pass it over to Deputy Director Ramos. Thank you.
Good morning. Happy Thursday. For the record, Wanda Ramos, Deputy Director for Recreation and Leisure Services, and I'm here to request your approval to be able to move funding that was allocated and approved in the last budget cycle for a Saturday school program. Of course, we're not a school, we're a Department of Parks and Recreation, and we intend to change the name to Saturday Enrichment Program, but we would like to begin implementing this program, and we'll need the funding to be moved to the 2 divisions that will be supporting the 8 schools that we have outlined for this program this year, in this fiscal year. It's going to be very intensive, and we're looking to hire vendors, in contract with vendors. So we're asking for your approval to move the funding from a non-departmental to a departmental in the 2 divisions that will take place. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have about the program and what we're planning and intending to do to assist the children with math and reading and adding some STEAM activities to their Saturday program.
Thank you, Deputy Director. So just one quick note for my fellow commissioners, if you may be tracking this as well, but this is Councilmember Burrows, who's quite passionate about this program and encouraging us to take this on. And I see this as a real opportunity for us to push a little bit the boundaries of the kind of things that we do to help with the young people in the county. So I'm excited about the potential and to see how this rolls out. But let me turn it over to you to see, commissioners, if you have any questions for staff about this item.
Do we have,
Seeing
I have
none?
one question. I
Yeah,
have one
Commissioner.
question. Yeah, I just want to know, is it at a specific location, Ms. Ramos?
So
Or is
we,
it-
yes, so we identify 8 schools, and the reason for going to the school system and using the park schools that we currently have, as you know, we have community centers attached to the schools. So those are the ones we're utilizing, so we can still use a recreation facility that is requested for so many other interests, right? Other activities, but using the classrooms at those schools. So we already have staff there. And right now we have 4 in the northern part of the county and 4 in the southern part of the county. So yes, it will be at the park schools that we have: Berwyn Heights, Columba Park, Deerfield Run, Largo Kettering, Perrywood, Glass Manor, Fort Washington, Forest, Oakcrest, and William Beans.
Great, thank you.
Couple questions real quick, because it wasn't obvious in the memo. How are you selecting the students? Could students from other schools attend? And then what are we going to do for transportation items, since it's only 4 schools there that in each kind of area of the county? What happens if students are in other locations that are farther away but would like to attend, but don't necessarily have the transportation or income kind of means to do so?
So we are not providing transportation at this time. It could be something that we consider, and I apologize for my voice, that we consider, because it's a Saturday. We are hoping the parents can transport the children to our programs. The principals are very excited to be able to use the schools, but we're open for anyone in the school system ages 6 to 9. So we're not using grades, we're using ages. And we have met many times with a school system to try to figure out the best curriculum for the young people. And that was the age that we agreed on. So right now we can look to see if we have a number of kids from other areas and possibly look at community centers. But right now we did not think we could provide the transportation.
Okay, no, I think it's fine. It's like sort of a first test to see how well this goes. How are people going to sign up for it? Is this going to be through the same portal that we have? So if they have an account, then they can do that? Or how are we going to kind of get it out so students know?
So we're working with the marketing, our public affairs and marketing division to publicize it and put it in social media through the schools. And it will be by registration through the Parks Direct.
Okay,
The ones
I think this is great. I haven't heard anything about it. And I have a child in the public school system. So you can use me as a test.
We haven't advertised anything yet. We're trying to get the approvals and set it up correctly. So we continue to work with, we're trying to bring vendors to help us. I mean, we're recreation, so we are not experts in reading and math skills. So, but we can do some of the STEAM activities and the fun activities. So we're still in the implementation phase. So no marketing has been completed yet.
Okay, and if you want to use me as a test case later in terms of has the message reached the students, you can ping me later because we usually get emails, sometimes only in English, but they also will put attachments in French and Spanish in the distributions. So I can check those out and let you know if it's actually coming through in multiple languages, just so you have sort of a verification point.
All right, perfect. And we have met with the CEO, Dr. Monica Golson and her staff. So they're very aware about the program and what we intend to do. So I'm pretty sure we will be advertising with them, marketing, but I will pin you as soon as I have a flyer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Quick question. If approved, what is your start date?
Well, that's why I need this money to be in the fund so I can contact.
If approved.
If approved, correct. If we move it from that fund, that non-departmental to the division, so we can then, right, you know, we're working overtime in this program so that we can do the contracts and begin the program.
And next school season?
I'm hoping February, mid-February, but I mean, that's like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Right, so.
Okay, thank you.
One quick question. You may have mentioned this, what is the sort of capacity range that we're imagining?
So right now, and it's all in the negotiations right now with the vendors that we hoping to bring in. Right now, we are at its 60 maximum capacity, so they can have a more intensive, help. But I'm hoping we can increase it to at least 100 per school at 8 schools.
Okay. Wait, you're saying a total of 60 or 60 per school?
60 per school.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks for that. Other questions for commissioners?
Yeah, just one other kind of request. As you start this up, assuming you get approval and you start it up, please make sure that you tell these students about the summer camps as well. Because some of the summer camps are sports related, but some are activity related, art and different things, but some of them are STEAM. And we could definitely, if they like it and if this is good enrichment for them and it helps complement what they may or may not be getting in schools at times, then they can participate in the other activities we have, because we have robotics and airspace stuff, like tons of things that they could continue sort of academic enrichment over the summers as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we'll make sure that we talk to the parents and we engage them in conversations also about our fee reduction fee, the application that fee assistance that we give for the camps and all the camp information.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No more questions, commissioners. Then we're looking for an action item. This is an action item. The motion would be to approve the $1.5 million transfer as recommended by staff. Is there a motion to that effect?
I move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Got a motion by, thank you. We got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bailey,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
That
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you all for all the work on this, and we're excited to hear the progress of it as it goes along.
Thank you.
We have one final Parks and Rec item. There's a draft resolution, PGC PB number 2022-136, Cedar Chase Park. Director Tyler. I believe Mr. Sun is presenting on this.
Yes, Mr. Sun is presenting. Thank you.
Do we have any staff report on this, or is this just a vote on a resolution? Mr. Sun, is there anything you need to bring before us on this, or are we just taking action on this? We can't hear you, Mr. Sun. Still can't hear you. Paul, you're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Mr. Chair, let me see if I can contact someone else that can. Okay, there we go.
Sorry about that. There is nothing present. There's just 2 easements that we presented open session last about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so this is just a resolution ratifying the decision that we already made when this
Yes,
came before. So, okay, so commissioners, is there a motion to approve the draft resolution?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Washington, and a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington,
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner,
That
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Director Tyler, and thanks to your team. We have the items on the consent agenda. Is there anyone here who wishes to oppose the staff's recommendations on item 4A, or any board members, commissioners who wish to discuss any of these items? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
After consideration of the record for items number 4A, I move adoption of the staff findings and approval of the items on the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendation of staff.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo,
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
That
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. We'll now move on to our regular agenda items. We'll begin with item number 5. This is DSP 22-015-9113 Baltimore Avenue. The attorney for the applicant is Tom Haller. We'll have a staff presentation by Ms. Gupta. And yeah, that's it. So take it away, Ms. Gupta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to you and members of the board. For the record, I'm Ridula Gupta with the Urban Design section. I'm sorry, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you
Yes.
fine.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The item before you is item 5, detailed site plan DSP-22015 for 9113 Baltimore Avenue. This application proposes one mixed-use building with 317 multifamily dwelling units and 3,296 square feet of ground floor commercial space. As a matter of housekeeping, the additional backup includes one exhibit received from the applicant and 4 letters of opposition from citizens, all received prior to the January 17th noon deadline. Staff also received 2 exhibits from the City of College Park, which were received after the deadline and were therefore not included in the case record. Next slide, please. The subject property is in Planning Area 66 and Council District 3. Next slide, please. More specifically, the 3.82 acre subject site outlined here in red is located in the southeast quadrant of the intersection of Delaware Street and US 1. The property is also located within the municipality limits of the City of College Park. Next slide, please. The image to the left shows that the subject site, outlined here in red, is located in the local transit-oriented edge, or LTOE zone, as highlighted in pink color. The adjoining properties to the south and across US 1 are also located in the LTOE zone, while the properties to the north and east are located in the LTOE and residential single-family 65 zone. Pursuant to Section 27-1903D of the zoning ordinance, this detailed site plan is reviewed in accordance with the prior zoning ordinance, under which this site is within the mixed-use infill or MUI zone as shown in the image to the right in dark pink color. Next slide, please. The image to the left shows that the subject site, outlined in red, is not located within any overlay zone. Under the prior zoning ordinance, however, as shown in the image to the right, the property is located in the Development District Overlay, or DDO zone, of the 2010 approved Central US 1 Corridor Sector Plan and Sectional Map Amendment. Next slide, please. The aerial photograph shows that the site outlined in red is currently developed with 3 hotels, which are to be raised. The property is bound to the north by Delaware Street, with offices and single-family residential dwellings beyond. To the west by US 1, with a motel and mixed-use development beyond. To the east by a church and apartment building, and by unimproved 48th Street, with single-family residential dwellings and vacant land beyond. And to the south by Cherokee Street, with vacant land proposed for mixed-use development beyond. Next slide, please. This slide shows that the site, which is delineated in pink, slopes evenly away from US 1 in a southeasterly direction. Next slide, please. This slide shows US 1, which is classified as a major collector, highlighted in blue, and is located on the west side of the site. Next slide. This is the bird's eye view of the property, which is outlined in red, looking east. The existing development on the property can be seen, which consists of 3 hotels, which are to be removed. Next slide, please. As stated earlier, the property is located in the DDO zone of the Central US 1 Corridor Sector Plan. Further, this property is located in the walkable node character area of the DDO zone as highlighted in this map in gold color. The property is outlined in blue. The properties to the south across Cherokee Street, to the southeast, and to the north across Delaware Street are also within the walkable node character area. Next slide, please. This slide shows the site plan, which depicts one 6 to 7 story building, approximately 76 feet in height, and oriented towards US 1. The detailed site plan was filed and designed in accordance with the preliminary plan of subdivision 4-22007, which was approved by the Planning Board in September 2022. The building's frontage on the south will include ground level commercial retail space along Cherokee Street. The main pedestrian entrance and lobby are located midway along the building facing US 1, while the main vehicle access to the structured parking garage is located off Cherokee Street. One right out only exit from the garage is located off US 1. There are several pedestrian access points provided to the building from US 1 and Cherokee Street. 48th Avenue will be improved to provide access to the loading and service areas located in the rear of the building. The vehicular access points are shown with red arrows, and the pedestrian access points are marked with blue stars on this slide. This development will be designed to achieve or exceed National Green Building Standard certification required for a silver rating, including solar and ventilation standards, utilize Energy Star appliances and LED lighting, and drought-tolerant vegetation. Dedicated parking spaces for charging electric vehicles are also provided in the parking garage. Other sustainable design features being employed in the project include avoiding surface parking areas, use of grass pavers, use of bioretention facilities, and managing on-site stormwater runoff. The proposed streetscape includes a 12-foot wide sidewalk along the frontage of US 1, 8-foot wide sidewalks along the frontages of Delaware Street and Cherokee Street, and 4 to 5 foot wide sidewalks along the frontage of 48th Avenue. A 6.5 foot wide bicycle path is also included along the frontage of US 1 per the recommendations of the Central US 1 Corridor Sector Plan. In addition, street trees and lighting, benches, bicycle racks, trash receptacles, and a landscape strip with planting are also proposed along the main streetscape of US 1. The Central US 1 Corridor Sector Plan includes standards for this development district, which contain regulations that impact the design and character of the Central US 1 Corridor. This application generally meets the standards of the development district, such as the building form and coverage requirements. However, the applicant is requesting modifications to several development district standards. These alternate standards may be approved if they can be found to benefit the development and the development district, and will not substantially impair implementation of the master plan amendment, or the sector plan. The applicant's request, staff's analysis, and recommendations for these requested modifications are presented in finding 7 of the staff report. Next slide, please. This slide shows the landscaping provided for the project in accordance with the applicable sections of the landscape manual. The plan provides landscaping along the street frontages in the outdoor recreational areas, planting for screening and green space requirement. Next slide, please. This slide exhibits the amenities provided for the residents. The recreational facilities for the to be provided on site include the following: an outdoor courtyard space, including a pool, a landscaped courtyard, outdoor seating areas, grilling stations and furniture, a multipurpose room, and a fitness center. These facilities are located in the area highlighted in pink. The recreational facilities also include a gated outdoor play area with a play structure and benches, highlighted in green, and an outdoor dog park, including a separate area for small dogs, a petway station, and a dog drinking fountain, which is shaded in blue. The applicant is also proposing a sunroom, library cafe, business center, game room, a kitchenette. These are all located in the pink area on the slide, and a bike storage room area with a repair station located in the parking garage. The yellow areas in the slide show the pedestrian lobbies along US 1. The next 4 slides, could you go to the next slide, please? So the next 4 slides show the perspective views of the proposed building. The architectural design of the multifamily building is contemporary with a flat roof and is finished with a mix of materials, including brick veneer, fiber cement panels and siding, and glass elements. Emphasis has been given to the variety of materials used on the facades using different volumes, massing, and architectural design elements. This slide shows the view from the intersection of US 1 and Delaware Street. The ground floor of the building has residential units in the northern portions of the building. On the ground floor located along US 1 are the main residential entrance, the lobby, and amenities. Floors 2 through 6 are proposed with residential units, and a number of them they include Juliet or full-size balconies. Next slide. This slide shows the view from intersection of US 1 and Cherokee Street. The proposed commercial retail space is located at the ground floor level at this corner. The upper floors consist of residential units. Next slide. This view is from Cherokee Street, and it shows the entrance to the parking garage, which is located in the eastern portion of the site. Next slide. This slide provides a view from the intersection of Delaware Street and 48th Avenue. The building is stepped down to 5 stories fronting 48th Avenue. This step back in building form, along with the landscape buffer on the property across the street, seen on the left edge of the slide, reduces the impact of the proposed development and provides a transition to the existing residential development to the east. Next slide. This and the next 4 slides depict the elevations for the proposed building fronting the adjoining streets, as well as elevations of the internal courtyard. Next slide. And you can go to the next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This slide shows details for proposed site signage, which include multiple building mounted signs proposed along US 1 and Cherokee Street, and above the residential, commercial, and parking garage entrances. Next slide. As mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, additional backup includes one applicant's exhibit, which proposes revisions to the recommended conditions, and also provides background on one of City of College Park's condition of approval, which staff did not carry forward in recommendations to the board. The applicant requests revisions to condition 1G, addition of condition 1R, revision to condition 3F, and deletion of condition 3H. Staff has reviewed the proposed conditions and is in agreement with revision to condition 1G, which relates to timing of construction of the on-site recreational facilities. Staff does not agree with the addition of condition 1R, since providing a right-in, right-out access from the parking garage to US 1 will not be in conformance with the conditions of approval of the applicable preliminary plan of subdivision. Staff's recommendation for this detailed site plan is based upon this plan meeting the requirements of the code and its evaluation based on conformance with prior approvals and the sector plan. Staff has no opposition to revision to condition 3F and deletion of condition 3H, which relate to architecture of the building, subject to the city's agreement to these revisions, since these were the city's conditions of approval carried forward by staff. Staff also received 4 letters from citizens in opposition to this detailed site plan. The letters express concern regarding inadequate utilities and parking to serve the proposed development and traffic impact. Concerns were also raised regarding the height of the building, noise generated, proposed density of the dwelling units, and transition to existing residential neighborhood. Staff also notes that the staff report includes an error on page 17 under finding 7F, building form and parking access. The finding incorrectly states that secondary access to the parking structure is provided via Delaware Street, and that access from Delaware Street exceeds the minimum width. Staff would like to clarify that there is no secondary access provided to the parking garage from Delaware Street, and that the only access to the garage is from Cherokee Street. If the board pleases, staff will make the appropriate correction to finding 7F. The site is exempt from the provisions of the Woodland Conservation Ordinance because the property contains less than 10,000 square feet of woodland. Finding 11 on page 28 of the staff report, however, lists a different exemption provision of the ordinance. If the board pleases, staff will make the appropriate correction to finding 11. In conclusion, staff recommends that the planning board adopt the findings and approve detailed site plan DSP-22015, approve the alternative development district standards listed on pages 37 and 38 of the staff report, subject to the conditions found on pages 38 through 42 of the staff report, and revisions to conditions 1G and conditions 3F and 3H as stated in applicant's exhibit 1, and corrections to findings 7F and 11. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Gupta. Commissioners, before we hear from the applicant, are there any questions for staff?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to slide 11 because I think that was a new slide that was inserted, which is helpful. So on this slide, I just have like two kind of main questions. You might defer the first one to the applicant, but I was hoping that you could provide a little bit more description about the crosswalks that are over US 1 right there, if it's going to be lit or how that's going to work right there. And then the crosswalk that's over, I guess, Cherokee Street, that runs kind of like horizontal in the image right here, or north and south in kind of direction. Is that going to be realigned like we had talked about in the PPS earlier? And then on my second question, it's on the deletion or the change of condition 1R, where we are saying we only want to write out as shown in this diagram, but the applicant's asking for write in, write out. I want to know, is the opposition by staff just because it wasn't in the preliminary plan and that would consider reconsideration, or is there some other like non-conformance that's not a that staff is not okay with? I just want a little more detail about why you're not in agreement with the applicant.
Thank you, Commissioner. The sidewalk, the crosswalks at Cherokee Street and US 1 intersection were part of the BPIS improvements condition of the preliminary plan, and they will be designed in accordance with the state highway and the city of College Park. I am not aware of the realignment issue, but the applicant can talk about it further because I'm not clear on the issues regarding the alignment.
Okay, which was brought up by me before, because when you try and walk across that intersection right there, it's not direct, like parallel with the street. Like you have to kind of go over to the side, and it was just a really messy intersection. So let's let the applicant talk about that, or Mr. Haller.
Yeah.
And on the other question, on the write in, write out.
Yeah. So yes, staff essentially, you're correct. We have a detailed site plan that was submitted in accordance and in conformance with the preliminary plan that was approved a few months ago. And the access to the site, the traffic analysis, the queuing analysis at the intersections, the critical intersections, they were all analyzed by staff at that time. And there were meetings with the applicant, between the applicant and the staff, that also reviewed the initially proposed right-in, right-out on US 1. And staff analysis at that time did not deem a right-in safe at that location. And Mr. Capers is on. I see him, and he can further talk about what was the decision-making process at the time of the preliminary plan, which led to that decision.
I also have Director Checkley here with me, who may want to be weighing in as well. So
yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Andre Green Checkley, Planning Director for the record. Very succinctly, the reason that the staff position is what it is because the detailed site plan was filed and designed in accordance with the preliminary plan and its conditions of approval. We have a concern about the safe operation and queuing that has not been demonstrated to allow the right in and right out is too close to the Cherokee intersection, and a dedicated turn lane, which was required with the preliminary plan at Cherokee Street US 1 intersection to alleviate the city's concerns and provide additional capacity. A right in and right out is also not in accordance with the sector plan recommendations, which state that access to the garage from US 1 should be avoided to the fullest extent possible to reduce the number of driveways. And the ultimate design for the US 1 anticipates a complete street with bike lanes and wide sidewalks, to be pedestrian friendly. Providing the right in, right out kind of defeats that vision of a complete street and creates, in staff's opinion, an unsafe environment with additional points for conflict between vehicular and pedestrian traffic.
very helpful. I appreciate that. Is there any other staff responses to this issue, Commissioner Joyner? Does that address what you were asking?
Yes, yeah, it is. Thank you. That was helpful.
So if there's nothing else for staff, let me turn to the applicant, Mr. Haller. You can introduce your team. We've got a number of folks here with the developers team. You can introduce the folks, and you can manage the process as you see fit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the Planning Board. Thomas Haller, I'm an attorney with offices in Largo, and it's my pleasure today to be here representing RST Development, which is the applicant for this mixed-use project, which is known as the Flats at College Park. Let me just start by saying that there are three components to this project that set it apart from other projects which you've seen in the Baltimore Avenue corridor. The first element is that this is a true redevelopment project. This building will replace three older motels, which, just to be kind, have outlived their ability to serve the community's interest. And so we're happy to be able to accomplish that goal, which is something that the sector plan has attempted to encourage. The second unique element to this project is that even though it's in the Route 1 corridor, it is not student housing. In fact, it is a 100% affordable rental project, which will be operated by RST Development and will be programmed to integrate in the community. And I'm going to ask Mr. Copeland to address you in just a minute, but just to give you a little bit more flavor on that. But the third element of this project that is unique is that in our meetings with the North College Park Civic Association, we were introduced to Meals on Wheels. And Meals on Wheels has long been located in the city of College Park, but was not able to stay and is now relocated outside of the city. And they expressed an interest in occupying the commercial component of this building. And we are working with them to accomplish that goal. They are the projected tenant for our commercial frontage. and RST is working with them and is providing that space to them for around $1 a year in order to facilitate their operations. So we are very happy to have them as part of this project, and Scott will give you a little bit more flavor as to how it fits in with their overall mission. But if I could, before I get into the specific details of the application or the issues that have been raised, I would like Mr. Copeland to address you briefly to discuss RST's plans for the project.
Good morning, and thank you. And I promise I will be brief. Although I could speak of this project for quite a while, because we are very excited about it for the reasons and others that Tom has already mentioned. And I just want to highlight a few things. Obviously, the affordable piece is important. We are a long-term affordable developer and are excited to bring these 317 affordable units to this inside the Beltway location where it is desperately needed, as I'm sure you all have heard and would agree. The second piece that I want to highlight is this special relationship that we have with the community. And Meals on Wheels is a highlight, and we're very excited to share the physical space with them, but to also enhance their importance in the community. And then the other piece that we spoke about a little bit at the preliminary plan is the relationship to yet another partner, which is called Main Street Connect, that I mentioned before, is located in Rockville. And in full disclosure, is a family entity. My wife runs the organization, and it is housed inside of an apartment building that offers, again, affordable, and in this case, inclusive housing opportunities for people with special needs and physical and other disabilities. And Main Street Connect will be an integral part of the operation of this property. And the programming is vibrant and robust, and I can't do justice to all the good work that they do day in and day out. I can only highlight this past week, actually, just on Monday, for our in commemoration of Martin Luther King Day, the service day, we had over 225 people that fully represented the diversity of our community. And I see that happening here too. These are important pieces to enhancing our community, and we feel honored and privileged to be able to do it. So I'll pass it back to Tom, and thank you all very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Scott. And I do want to mention that in addition to Scott, we have Danny Copeland as well from RST. We also have other representatives of our team, including our traffic consultant, Wes Guckert, and our representatives of our architects, as well as our engineers, to answer any questions that you have. From a technical standpoint, we are in virtual full agreement with staff and the staff's recommendation. And there's one particular issue that I do want to discuss and highlight, which has been raised and requested by the City of College Park. Obviously, we've been working with the city very closely over several months, and we are excited about their enthusiastic support for the project. And as I mentioned, we're largely in agreement with your staff's recommendation as well. The proposed revisions to conditions that Ms. Gupta highlighted are intended to incorporate the city's conditions to the extent that they are slightly different than your staff's condition. There is one condition that the city has requested and that we have requested, which is not supported by your staff, and that is the provision of a right-in entrance to the garage where it fronts on Baltimore Avenue. And I submitted a letter to you on Tuesday to provide some background, but just to kind of review the highlights, I wanted to provide a little bit of the history of how we got to where we are for you to have some understanding of where we are. As we stated in our letter, when we submitted our preliminary plan, our initial traffic study and our initial design concept did include a right-in, right-out entrance onto US 1. In response to our initial submittal, referrals from both the Community Planning Division as well as transportation planning, objecting to that movement because of, in large part, because of the recommendations of the sector plan, which state that when a property fronts on both a primary road and a secondary road, that primary access should be from the secondary street. Again, that is to avoid adding additional points of access to the primary road. On July 18th, we had a meeting with your staff, Transportation Division, the City of College Park, and State Highway Administration to discuss the issue. And what we explained to them at that point in time is that we do have our primary entrance to the garage on Cherokee Street. And the way the garage is designed is you'll enter into Cherokee Street, you'll go up a ramp, and then you will reach the entrance to the building. And we had designed the garage to provide for a drop-off for Uber, Lyft drivers, as well as a place for package delivery services such as Amazon to be able to deliver packages. And we anticipate that most of those trips will leave the garage and travel north on Route 1. And so the idea of having the right out is to allow for that free flow through the garage and not force those types of drivers to do a U-turn. Staff reviewed their concern that by providing a right in and right out, that it would make that a primary entrance to the garage. And they felt that that did not conform to the sector plan. But they did indicate that if we modified our entrance to restrict it to only a right out, that would ensure conformance with the sector plan because it would no longer be a primary entrance to the garage and that they could support that revision. We ultimately revised our our preliminary plan of subdivision to change the entrance to the garage from a right in, right out to a right out only. And we did that really for two reasons. The first reason was because our traffic study that we submitted with the application indicated that movement, the right in movement, would only serve 3 vehicles in the AM peak hour and 12 vehicles in the PM peak hour. And so from that perspective, it wasn't necessarily serving a high volume of traffic. But more importantly, the city had asked us to widen Cherokee Street where it intersects with US 1. That is not a movement, that is not an improvement that was necessary to achieve a finding of adequacy. But currently, Cherokee Street is a 2-lane road, one lane going eastbound, 1 lane going westbound. And when you get to US 1, where a traffic signal was just installed in approximately 2015, if a car wants to turn right and there are cars waiting at the light to turn left, they back up. And that is an issue that the neighborhood has seen. And that was a concern that was expressed to us. And when we looked at that issue, even though it wasn't a necessary adequacy requirement, we viewed that as being a benefit to not only the project, but also being a benefit to the community as well. Because what it does ensure is that vehicles won't back up and block the entrance to the garage. And if they block the entrance to the garage, obviously, that could cause them to back up toward US 1. So we proffered to make that improvement. We revised our plans to accommodate that improvement. That widening is shown on our detailed site plan. And it was for that reason that we ended up not pushing the issue at the time of preliminary plan. And so the preliminary plan was approved with the right out only exit. And we have conditions that require the detailed site plan to conform with that. And so that's what we brought to this application when we filed it. When we appeared before the city council on the detailed site plan in December, and then again earlier this month, several of the council members who represent this area and who live in the neighborhood behind us expressed a concern about having that right in added back to the garage. I'm going to let the city articulate their concerns because they will do that more than I would. But they noted several issues. One of which is that the community has noticed an increase in cut-through traffic since the traffic signal was constructed at Cherokee and Route 1. And so the traffic through their neighborhood has increased. And they also noted that there is going to be another multifamily building constructed on the south side of Cherokee Street across from our property. it's been approved and a portion of the development has been constructed, but that building has not. And so their concern is that the addition of that building in combination with the cut through traffic is going to increase traffic in that area. And I think their view, and I'll let them express it, is that taking any traffic out of that intersection would be a benefit to the community. And so as a result of that, they asked us if we would consider adding it back. And I'll be clear, RST in a perfect world would like to have that entrance into the garage. It provides additional point of access into the garage. But we are concerned about the impact that filing a reconsideration would have on the timing of the app on this. And I think that if the planning board reviews this issue and were to elect to have us add that entrance back, what we would request is that the planning board authorize staff to expedite the consideration of that so it doesn't hold us up. But as I said, we did propose it initially because it does provide another access into the garage. But we do not want the timing to be delayed in a manner that it would impact the project. So I just wanted to express that, and I'm going to obviously the city will be testifying with regard to their concerns with regard to that. To just touch on a couple of other issues, Commissioner Durner asked about the crosswalks, and as staff indicated, we were trying to identify BPIS improvements when we did the preliminary plan, and as part of that, our certificate of adequacy for the project included improvements at several crosswalks. We have we are going to be, there are 2 crosswalks currently striped on at the intersection of Cherokee and Route 1. And so we will be providing crosswalks on all 4 legs of the intersection, as well as crosswalks at US 1, at Route 1 and Indian Lane, and US 1 and Fox Street. And to your point about the alignment, as I noted before, we'll be adding a right turn lane on Cherokee, which is going to force, if you will, a realignment of the road to some extent. And so that will all be worked out with State Highway as part of the permitting process as we add those crosswalks and any pedestrian signals that are necessary in order to accommodate those crosswalks. I mean, the goal on this project is to create a much more pedestrian-friendly area along Route 1. As you can see on the plan that's in front of you, we are proposing a cycle track, which is recommended by the sector plan, as well as a wide 12-foot sidewalk. So we're going to be making substantial improvements that will enhance the pedestrian experience along the road. But particularly as it relates to the crosswalks, we're providing substantial improvements there as well. I'm going to stop my presentation at this point. I know there's some other people that have signed up to speak, and I will appreciate the opportunity to respond to any concerns that they raise. But our issue with regard to the application is we have proposed revisions of the conditions to implement the requested conditions that were approved by the city. And we look forward to answering any questions that you have with regard to any of those matters.
Thank you, Mr. Adler. Appreciate it. Before we turn to folks who've signed up to speak, and we'll start with the City of College Park when we do that, are there any questions for the applicant from commissioners?
Yeah, I'd like to just ask about the write-in and find out how that would be restricted to only the handful of cars or vehicles that you had mentioned would be using it potentially, Mr. Haller, and not other cars that would be going on site or confusing in any way. And then I'll just sort of tee up a question also for Ms. Shum. If we're thinking about a write-in, or at least it's something that's being talked about at the moment, how does that not adding the write-in not conflict with the complete streets or endanger pedestrian and bike travel that's going through here if they're looking in another direction? And in fact, like even the ride out, how does that not kind of break up some of the flow in that area as opposed to just using the intersections that are right there? So those are my 2 questions for Mr. Haller and eventually for Ms. Shum.
Sure, and thank you for that question. With regard to, I think the planning board is aware that there are plans by State Highway Administration to upgrade this portion of Route 1 Those are not at a stage where they're beginning construction as they are south of 193, but there are plans to upgrade Route 1 and provide medians. I know that when we were talking about access to the project, even with the right out only, the city expressed concern that we approach State Highway Administration about placing a median of some sort to make sure that nobody tries to turn left out of that, even though it's going to be channeled. And they had that same concern, I think, when we proposed it as a right in, right out, is to make sure that we approach State Highway about putting some sort of a median or a barrier to make sure that people don't try to go the other way. I think as far as coming out of the garage, the vehicles will be moving slowly, and because of the width of our sidewalk and the setback of the building, I think there's plenty of opportunity for both pedestrians and bicyclists and motorists to have visibility so that there isn't any safety issue with regard to the ability to exit the garage. Entering the garage, obviously cars will be coming in and slowing down as they approach the entrance, if the entrance was provided. There will be adequate visibility right along northbound Route 1 with the improvements that we're making, again, with a wide sidewalk. I mean, we think it could operate safely in both directions. Obviously, having it only one way reduces points of conflict. We get that. But I do think it could operate safely under either scenario.
Just kind of going back to my question, more specifically for you, Mr. Heller, how do you prevent other cars from going in there that aren't supposed to be going in? So when you had mentioned earlier that the purpose for the right in was for certain kinds of vehicles to access in the AM PM hours, how do you?
I'm sorry, I must have misspoken. The purpose of the right in is not only for a specific number of a specific type of vehicles. Anybody could come in that way. Anybody could come in that way. So I don't want to. I think my comment was that when we designed the garage, the anticipation was that people would enter the garage from Cherokee, go up the ramp, drop off packages or passengers, and then exit. And that the right out was in particular to improve traffic flow in the garage to avoid people having to turn around to go back to Cherokee Street. But the entrance was not restricted to any particular type of vehicle or to any particular type of movement.
Okay, that might have been my misunderstanding, but that helps in the clarification. Okay, that's it for you for now. Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chair, for Mr. Haller, and I may have missed it. I didn't see it. Is there a provision for electric vehicle charging?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
And I'm sure you heard there's also a dog fountain as well, fountain for the dogs.
I did. I did. Thank you very much.
You got you. And we got them all covered.
I know, and I'm sure the residents will appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions before I turn to City College Park? Okay, Ms. Shum, and who else? I just want to make sure I'm understanding who's going to be speaking on behalf of the City of College Park. I'm going to turn to you, Ms. Shum, appropriately or not. Just tell me who from the City of College Park do we have on the list who will be speaking?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. In addition to myself, we have City Attorney Sue Ellen Ferguson. We have council member from the district where this project resides, Letitra Esters, and we have senior planner Miriam Bader, who will only speak if necessary. But the city attorney and the council member would like the opportunity to speak to you today.
We defer to the council member? That makes sense to me.
Well, I think the council member would like to follow a staff and the attorney unless she is now with us, so you could ask her directly about her preference.
Council member, it's your call how you want to proceed with the folks who are speaking on behalf of the City of College Park. I'll turn it over to you, and you can direct whoever you want to go first.
Thank you. I think that I would defer to the attorney first and go thereafter.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start with Ms. Ferguson.
Mr. Chair, I believe that if Dr. Esters is referencing that she would like to go last, we would prefer that Terry Shum orient the board so that our arguments are clear to the board.
clear as day. We'll start with Ms. Shum, and then I believe we'll then go to Ms. Ferguson, and then we'll go to Dr. Esters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Terry Shum. I'm the planning director for the city of College Park, and I'm here.
Hold on one sec. Ms. Shum, we've got some feedback. Just hold on one sec till we clear that up. Try speaking again, see how it does.
And I'm here representing the city of College Park's position, the city council's position on this matter, along with the persons just mentioned who will speak after me. So I'd like to start off by apologizing for being 4 minutes late in getting our city council position letter into the board. We were having some computer difficulties. We were hoping this could be accepted, but I would like to ask now that you accept the city's letter dated January 17th, 2023 into the record. And I'd also like to ask if by chance you do have a copy of that before you now for reference, because I'd rather not read it into the record, but let me hear your response.
Hold on, I'm checking with staff, Ms. Shum. Hold on a sec. It did not make it in time, so we do not have it. So I think it will be helpful if you read it into the record.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. I will just say that.
How long is it, Ms. Shum?
It is 4 pages long. So what I would like to do, if possible, since the city council's motion mimics mostly what your staff's motion was and what the applicant has proffered in terms of changes today. So I would instead like to focus attention on the one area of disagreement between the city and your staff, and that is in regard to the city staff's proposed condition 4F.
That sounds like a good way to proceed. So take it away and let's talk about the issue of contention and focus our energy on that.
Okay, thank you very much. So as you've already heard from Mr. Howler, the city is requesting in condition 4F that a write-in to the project from Route 1 be added to the existing write-out only that's shown on the site plan. So while the city voted unanimously to support this project, and I would like to say we are really thrilled to be getting affordable housing to add to our existing stock in the city. So there is complete support for the project in that regard. And this is the sole difference of opinion. However, it is critical, it was critical to the city's support of the project. And that's why the request is to add the write-in to Route 1 and to, and it sounds like it would be necessary to request a reconsideration from you to allow this to happen, since it is part of a preliminary plan condition already. But I want to say a couple of things about that. First of all, adding the right in to the project does not make this the primary access to the project. The primary access is from Cherokee Street, as you've heard, and that is where there's an existing traffic signal. So the Route 1 access is really a secondary access. And the sector plan is clear about being opposed to primary access on Route 1 if there are other alternatives, as there is in this case. But to also get at Mr. Dorner's question a little bit, This project is a little exceptional. You've heard that it replaces 3 existing motels that had multiple access points to the site. And this building is one building. It's a single building that is approximately 600 feet long. So in some places, that would be the equivalent of 3 city blocks. So it is not exceptional to expect that you would have additional access into a project like this and not rely on a single access from Cherokee Street. So what has been demonstrated in the traffic impact analyses, and there were 2 of them done by the applicant, is that there will be relief on Cherokee Street if this right-in is outed. And if you'd like, I can spell out the exact benefit in terms of numbers, but let me just say generally that it would improve the intersection of Route 1 and Cherokee and the traffic volume along Cherokee, which the traffic impact study correctly notes is at level E at this time and near failing in terms of its critical lane volumes. So it would help the traffic on Cherokee Street. We've heard that it won't harm the traffic on Baltimore Avenue as it only results in, I believe it's 3 a.m. and 12 peak hour trips on Baltimore Avenue. And the State Highway Administration, who has looked at this project, has no objections to the conceptual design of the project as right in, right out. So Mr. Howler did also mention the city's concern about the possibility of making left turns in or out of the site. That is not something that the city supports. And unfortunately, we're waiting for the State Highway Administration to put a median in front of this project, which would prevent that movement from happening. But we also know that you could, at this location, put a small median in front of this access point to prevent those left ins, left out. So it's been done elsewhere on the corridor. So another point I'd like to make is that the city really doesn't think, and it's been demonstrated by the traffic analyses, is that this is not an adequate public facilities issue. It is really a sector plan issue, and so is most properly dealt with at the detailed site plan level. This is a standard in the Route 1 sector plan. This project meets adequacy without the right in or the right out. Adequacy is not impacted with the addition of the right in, and there would be overall benefit to the project by adding it, and the applicant supports it as well. As you heard, it was their initial plan for this project to have a right in, right out access. So, that is essentially the disagreement between us and your staff in regard to the impact, regard to the APF issues. And we would urge the planning board to add this condition, support this condition, and ask the applicant to add the right-in back to their project and facilitate the request for reconsideration before you at a later date, which the applicant has also requested. So with that, I will stop and turn it over to the city's attorney, Sue Ellen Ferguson.
If there are no questions at this point, I will continue. Thank you. Sue Ellen Ferguson, City Attorney for the City
Ferguson,
of
I'm sorry. Ms. Frick, let me know, I was on mute, I apologize. I think there probably will be some questions. I have some as well. If you're going to be talking about other subjects beyond the write-in, write-out issue, or is that where you're going to focus your talk as well?
That is where we will focus because the city's in support of the remainder of the conditions that are proposed.
All right, so then why don't you all continue? We'll wait till we hear from all of you before we have any questions related to this issue.
Very good, thank you. The condition that Ms. Shum is referencing is to provide a write-in, write-out access from the parking garage to Baltimore Avenue, subject to planning board approval of a reconsideration of preliminary plan 4-22007 if required. The city, as Ms. Shum has noted, is very much in support of this project to the extent that it is allowing as part of the project the use of city right-of-way at the rear for the entrance from Delaware Street. So there is support from the city also, and that's very strong support. However, there's a very strong countervailing concern here about the cut-through traffic that has developed over the last few years, based on the fact that there's a light that's been installed at Cherokee Street, so that traffic is coming over from Rhode Island Avenue and the streets in between to have a light access onto Route 1. And the city heard strongly about that in a fairly long meeting. Also, from the council members have heard a lot about this issue, and as Ms. Shum has noted, Dr. Esters is a resident of that area. I'm here to talk about the procedural part, which is we do have a preliminary plan that just has the write-out option, even though at the beginning of the preliminary plan, a write-in, write-out was shown as on the plan. And so the city does not wish to delay this project either. And so is looking today for this condition so that there's reassurance for the developer and for the city that the planning board would support this write-in term, so that any additional activity that is required, such as returning to the planning board, would be something that hopefully would be expedited, but we would be fairly reassured that it would have a favorable hearing. So that's one of the reasons that this condition is in the DSP. And as Ms. Shum has also noted, this is not an adequacy issue at this point. It's more of a requirement of the sector plan. This development reduces the number of entrances from Route 1 into the property considerably. You've already got an exit that is proposed. So adding the write-in is not that much of a addition in terms of the amount of space it takes. The State Highway Administration has indicated that it has no issues with this configuration. We're hoping that the planning board will be able today to take an action that would show support for this, and if necessary, could possibly, depending on what a required planning board hearing for the preliminary plan to accommodate that, would allow two options in the detailed site plan, depending on what occurs later. So I thank you for your time, and I would like to hand over to Dr. Esters for her comments.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Dr. Esters, take it away, council member.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Letitra Brown Esters, and I am a resident and serve on the City Council. I'd like to begin by saying that I appreciate and am excited for the affordable housing project proposed by RST Development. As many of you know, this region is in great need of affordable housing, and I'm happy that the City of College Park has the opportunity to add such a housing option to our inventory, as was said earlier. However, my concern about the plans for this project has to do with the limited access to its 360 parking space garage, which is currently planned for Cherokee Street. In recent years, this street has seen increased activity in traffic as a traffic light has been installed, and it has become a cut through from Rhode Island Avenue to Baltimore Avenue. There has also been the addition of townhomes on the street and yet another pending development on Cherokee Street and Baltimore Avenue. All of these factors have caused grave concerns about traffic and congestion. The developer has proposed the widening of the street and the addition of the right turn lane, which is greatly appreciated, but I would argue that that is not enough. Cherokee Street should not have to bear the brunt of the traffic and congestion being the only entrance to the garage. And I hope that the planning board will seriously consider a right into the garage from Baltimore Avenue. I want our residents to appreciate.
I know that was okay.
Bear with us one sec. We'll take care of that technical issue, Councilmember. Hold on one sec.
Sure.
Okay, we got it. Apologies for the technical issue and continue.
No issue. Thank you very much. I want our residents to appreciate the development for its merits rather than resent it due to the difficulty it will present for current and future residents. I'd like to also clarify as well that Cherokee Street, it actually houses two districts. So the development is in District 1, that side of Cherokee Street. The other side is District 2, which I represent and obviously live in that area and have heard from residents on both sides of that area. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, much appreciated. Commissioners, we have other folks who signed up to speak as well, in addition to the folks from the City of College Park, but let me just stop here to see if there are any specific questions related to for folks in the City of College Park before we hear from other speakers.
Mr. Chairman, I have two questions, and they're clarifying in nature. And Ms. Shum, and forgive me if I misheard you, but I thought you had a different perspective or take on the conflict with the sector plan. And if so, if you could please elaborate on that. And then my second question is related to Cherokee Street or Avenue. And I believe Mr. Haller in his overview or his presentation, he indicated that they had agreed to widen that street, and I wondered if in fact that, if I understood him correctly, going from a 2-lane to perhaps a 4-lane, or at least to include a turning lane, if in fact that will have any impact on the cut-through traffic from Rhode Island over to Baltimore Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you like me to respond to question number 1 regarding the sector plan?
Yes, please.
Thank you for that question. The Route 1 sector plan has been guiding development up and down Route 1 for the past 10 years now. And there are pages and pages of development standards, as you are well aware. And all of those standards are can be modified at the request of the applicant if they are thoroughly justified and then supported by your staff and you. So what the sector plan says specifically is that it strongly discourages primary access from a primary frontage. So in this case, US 1, Baltimore Avenue, is the primary frontage. Cherokee Street, obviously, is a secondary street, and that is where the primary access is located. So that is the main access to the garage. It provides a right in, right out. And therefore, I believe, complies with the sector plan. And a secondary access on Route 1 is not prohibited. It could be modified if you believe it is needed, but I don't believe the language in the sector plan requires that. Again, because it does not provide the primary access for this project. So hopefully that helps but I can clarify further if needed.
No, it does, Ms. Shum. Thank you so much. I wanted to make sure I understood your explanation. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Can I ask you, Sean, I'm curious, like, why would?
Mr. Dorner, can I get a response to my second question regarding
Okay,
Cherokee?
okay. Yeah,
That's
sorry.
it.
Was that directed at me? I'm sorry. Could you repeat that question?
Yeah, Mr. Haller in his initial presentation spoke to the widening of Cherokee Street, meaning as I understand it now, it's just two lanes, one direction, the other direction. And each of you spoke about the cut through traffic from Rhode Island over to Baltimore Avenue. And if I understood Mr. Haller correctly, he indicated that they are in fact planning improvements for Cherokee. And I just wondered if that had been taken into consideration with regards to the right in, right out on Cherokee Street, or if that had any impact at all with regards to your position.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for asking for you to repeat it. But at the request of the city, a right turn out of Cherokee onto Baltimore Avenue is being provided, and you can see it on the site plan that's being displayed. It goes from the access to the parking garage on Cherokee and carries through to Baltimore Avenue where there is a traffic signal and would provide for, I'm not certain, between 6 to 10 cars to stack up there in order to make a right turn out of Cherokee. So what that does primarily is to allow through traffic and left turning traffic from Cherokee to not get backed up. So to allow the right turns out of Cherokee, which are the largest traffic movement on the street, to be accommodated without further distressing traffic on Cherokee Street already. So the applicant agreed to do this. Their second traffic study reviewed this addition to infrastructure and concurred that it would provide a benefit to traffic on Cherokee and to the project as a whole.
Yeah, and I agree with that is definitely a good improvement, but I'm just wondering if you then have right in access from Baltimore Avenue at that close to that same corner, you may be relieving access on Cherokee Street, but what about a line potentially going into the garage off Baltimore Avenue?
Yeah. So if you look at the traffic study that was done that considered the right in being added to the project, it projects that there will only be 3 morning and 12 p.m. peak hour trips that use that access. However, it also shows that the benefit to Cherokee Street is even greater. And if I could, I have some numbers here. There would be a decrease in traffic entering Cherokee Street of 6 vehicles in the AM peak hour and 18 in the PM peak. There would be a decrease in traffic exiting Cherokee Street and making a right turn of 17 vehicles in the AM and 10 in the PM. And then in addition, from the site access from the garage on Cherokee Street, there would be a decrease in 19 vehicles in the AM and 16 vehicles in the PM. And in addition to that, so that was the analysis regarding overall peak hour traffic volumes on the street. And if you look at the intersection capacity analysis, there is also improvement at the intersection when a right out is added to Baltimore Avenue. So there's improvement to the intersection of Route 1 and Cherokee Street. So the critical lane volumes here are still high. So currently they're at 1,577, and that is near a failing number. If you recall, failing is about 1,600 critical lane volume. And there is a reduction in that critical lane volume situation by adding the additional right-in from Route 1. So we believe the traffic studies done by the applicant, which we've relied on, indicate that there will be an overall benefit to Cherokee Street if this is added. And I think you've heard from the applicant that they believe it also benefits their project.
Thank you, Ms. Shum. That's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dorner, you had questions as well?
Yeah, I apologize for attempting to cut off Commissioner Washington. It wasn't intentional. I was just interested in Ms. Shum's depiction. It might be more from the transportation expert that Mr. Haller has. But what changes, or I guess, why would Cherokee Street be the primary entrance if a right-in is put onto Route 1? Because if I'm thinking about most of the traffic, it's going up and down Route 1, and if I'm going either up to the highway and going onto the Beltway, or if I'm going down into like DC or even into your city building, I'm probably going to pick Route 1 to kind of go there, even if there's I guess coming out of it, perhaps not if I can't do a left out. But I'm just curious as to why that wouldn't become the primary, because if I were ever to go there or live there, I would probably use that entrance all the time instead of trying to turn on the Cherokee and then maybe turn left into the garage especially if there's traffic into there.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's a really good answer to that question, and it is that there's an existing traffic signal at Baltimore Avenue and Cherokee Street. And so therefore, it safely accommodates left turns into and out of the project. On Route 1, left turn movements would be prohibited. And we're also asking SHA to accommodate, a small median in the center of the road to help ensure that left turns aren't made there. So because that is not a full movement access to the project, it is not the primary access. The primary access was always designed and intended to be Cherokee Street because that's where the traffic signal exists already and where all movements, vehicular and pedestrian, can be safely accommodated.
Okay, yeah, and I think that answers my question. Is just, it's still a little puzzling that it sort of assumes that everyone's going to go south from there, and I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the answer that's true. Like if people are always going north when they're exiting the building, then that Route 1 could actually become the primary focus for those cars. So it's just a little bit curious. I understand your statement and why that might be, just because it doesn't have one additional directional kind of egress, but I don't know if I would necessarily expect everyone to go down south. But, all right, thank you.
Appreciate those questions. Actually, it was helpful for me too. Other questions for City College Park? So I've got just a comment.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think to clarify some of the other commissioners' questions, I think Mr. Capers can respond to the traffic issues. And I before Mr. Capers can talk, I also wanted to clarify that Ms. Shum said that traffic is not an ADQ issue, but it was the access issue, the queuing analysis, the traffic, the distribution of the traffic trips at different intersections and access points is evaluated at the time of preliminary plan. And it's on that basis that a project is found adequate based on that analysis. And Ms. Shum or someone also said that the state highway was in agreement with this right-in, right-out. Actually, we did not receive a referral or any comments from the state highway on this project. We do have an email that was received at the time of the preliminary plan that said that the location of the proposed right-in, right-out, and I'm reading out their email, the location of the proposed right-in, right-out access point is conceptually acceptable. And it also further states that once more detailed engineering plans and supporting documents become available, the applicant will need to submit them to the MDOT SHA District 3 Access Management for a comprehensive review. So at the time of this email, State Highway had not done a review of the traffic study. I do not believe they looked at the safety issues, which are looked at by our staff. And Mr. Capers is online to further elaborate. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Gupta. Turn to Mr. Capers, and Ms. Thomas, I do see your hand. I'll get back to you in a sec. Mr. Capers? Anything you want to add?
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the planning board. I don't have too much to add. I am available for any questions that you may have. I align my comments with Director's checklists regarding the safety implications that were reviewed as part of the access point on Route 1, and also with Ms. Gupta's comments regarding the process and the procedure in evaluating access points as part of adequacy. There were some information that was provided by the traffic study that wasn't completely accurate that I am available to provide clarification on if needed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Capers. There may be questions for you. Ms. Shum, take it away. I just, before you go, I just want to say, I heard you say, either you or Ms. Ferguson, that State Highway had given some conceptual support for this. So that distinction between that formal approval versus saying, this is good in concept, I think we get that there's a distinction there. So, and Ms. Gupta, I appreciate you bringing that to our attention as well in that way. So Ms. Shum, you have something you want to add?
Yes, just very briefly. No, I do agree with Ms. Gupta's statement that there is, and I thought my comments reflected the email that she read, that State Highway had no objection to write-in being added, and that they conceptually did not have a problem with that and the detailed site plan. Also, I'd just like to say that it was my understanding that both traffic studies done by the applicant, one with just the write out only and one including the write in, write out, found the project to meet APF requirements. So it met adequacy regardless of which type of access on Route 1 you provided. So if there's additional information regarding that, I'm not aware of it. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Thanks for that. So, Commissioners, the only thing I wanted to add, and I don't know, there may be a question in what I'm about to say, I'm not sure, is that there's two things here we're dealing with. One is the content, whether this is a good idea or not. But then there's also the process piece. And I just want to speak to the process piece because I even heard, I think, Ms. Ferguson, your point that what would be helpful for you all would be if we could support you all going for a reconsideration and could even suggest that there would be some favorable consideration of that. That's how I heard what you said, which I want to be clear about our process, which is that if there was a request for reconsideration, we would take that up on the merits. And part of those merits is that there's certain criteria that have to be met for us to even consider a reconsideration. And we cannot prejudge any of that. So by any stretch of the imagination, we're not even hinting at what we might do if a reconsideration came before us, okay? So I just want to be crystal clear around our process piece. So there may be a request for reconsideration in the future, and we certainly would entertain that. But that's about as far as we would go in terms of what we might do in relation to that. And let me turn to Ms. Coleman. Does that sort of capture where we are and what we do and what we don't do accurately?
That's correct, Chair. The reconsideration request cannot be something that is guaranteed in advance. There has to be certain criteria that would be met even for the reconsideration request to be heard.
Okay, thank you.
May I speak, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you. I fully understand what you have said and fully expect that your attorney would support that. We're not asking for a predetermination. The What we're asking for is the support for the condition that I read out earlier that makes it, which is subject to the planning board approval at the preliminary plan level. That's what we're asking for. We're not asking you to prejudge it, but the other concern that came up when we were discussing this with staff the other day is a delay issue. So that if in fact it was returned to the planning board for a preliminary plan change, that then staff said to us at that time, then it would have to come back up to you at the detailed site plan level to allow for the change in the write-in, which shocked all of us in terms of the amount of time that would be required. So what we're asking for is that if it's possible to do it, that you allow for two options here, the one that's currently on the screen, and another option that would allow the write-in subject to the planning board approval. And hopefully that the planning board approval could be, review at the preliminary plan level could be expedited.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I'm just trying to think of how we do that in a way that doesn't hint at some kind of prejudgment. Ms. Coleman?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there's a process involved in all of that. And so while I'm certain that if it is something that the board would want to entertain as far as a reconsideration request and the subsequent revision to any type of plans, but there are notice requirements that are in place that we must comply with. So I'm certain staff would work with the applicant to try to do their part, but there would be certain steps that obviously could not be circumvented.
So you're saying, but I want to make sure I'm hearing this clearly from you and perhaps Director Checkley as well, that for us to take the action that Ms. Ferguson is suggesting, and I'm not talking about content, I'm just talking about process, that it's not appropriate for us. What I'm hearing you all saying, it's not appropriate for us to do what she's asking us to do, to put in two options at this stage of the process and have one of the options be conditioned upon a potential action that we might take in the future.
That's correct.
Okay. And Director Checkley, you want to weigh in?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that should the board decide that we could have alternate conditions. We could have a condition that basically says if the applicant receives a reconsideration, then they can do X.
And that would, in effect, without prejudging at all, that would expedite the process for the developer if it ended up going in that direction. It just gives them some flexibility.
Right, they wouldn't have to come back for a new detailed site plan.
Right, and thank you. And I understand, Ms. Coleman, that that's different than what you're saying. I think I would err on the side of our planning director folks on this one, even if it's, I don't know, if it doesn't quite fit in with the way our legal team sees how we should proceed. I think allowing some measure of flexibility without even coming close to prejudging the process makes sense to me. But I'm curious to see where you all are on this. And I actually want to look for a little advice. I wonder if we could stop this right now, go to hear from other folks who are going to speak, and then we can come back to this and whatever else we hear. Is that okay? The other thing, commissioners, is this day is going to go a little bit longer than I thought. And I'm wondering about a lunch break and some advice from you all, whether we should continue with this and have this process wrap up, which I don't know, could take another half hour. Do you want to take a break now and have everybody come back? What do you want to do, commissioners?
I would recommend we continue with this case. If it's probably another half hour or so, that's fine with me.
Yes, let's attempt to wrap this up. Mm-hmm.
I'm very surprised that my colleague would suggest that. I would assumed that we would go straight to lunch, but
I knew you would say that, Will.
if that's the recommendation, I can go with it. In terms of like procedural stuff, I just want to hear from maybe Ms. Gupta about the write-in in terms of, I think Ms. Shum sort of started to address my only concern about that's remaining about how this would kind of break up the complete streets. Because if we already have a write-out, I'm just kind of confused how an additional write-in would be any more damaging to the complete streets. In my preferred world, like we wouldn't have had any entrance right there because that would be the true complete streets. But if we're already allowing the write-out, then I don't see how the write-in would be any more conflicting. So that's kind of my hang up on this issue at the moment for this particular case, and I don't have any other hang-ups on other stuff.
Thank you. You have a question for Ms. Gupta around that?
Yeah, I just want to see what her kind of opinion is on that.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So adding a right in also, essentially you're adding more traffic, more vehicles to that entrance. Clear and simple. It's a no-brainer, and it's not been evaluated by staff, but just in adding a right in to a right out only is adding more vehicles to that point. And it's more points of conflict between bicyclists, pedestrians, and vehicles. And then you have, yes, Mr. Capers.
I was going to say, and to add to that, Mr. Dorner, as shown in that design, the complete streets theory require a sort of an uninterrupted, continuous network for pedestrians and bikes. As the design we have here limits the crossings. It's a shorter crossing. It's suitable for one vehicle to access it. Adding a right in will increase that by at least another 12 feet. The queues, as Ms. Gunther has provided, the queuing, and also as the other commissioners are providing, will occur on Route 1, which would disrupt that continuous network. So the right out, all the queues with the right outs, there are any queue, and it will be restricted within the site. It will not impede the road network or the multimodal transportation network.
Okay, so let me ask my question maybe a little bit differently then. And Mr. Capers, this might be for you if you're the one kind of reviewing it initially. Why did we allow a ride out? Because I mean, I agree that like, yeah, you're going to add extra length in there and more disruption, and sure, there's going to be more vehicles, but like in my perfect world, like we wouldn't have any entrances there. We'd be just totally restricted to the streets and not necessarily to the building entrances right there if we really wanted to prioritize pedestrian and bike safety and sort of other activity around there.
You are absolutely right, Commissioner Dorner. The initial meeting we had with the applicant, the City of College Park, and the state, staff did propose that they restrict completely access to Route 1. This was a compromise that we developed with the applicant. The applicant, as he stated, as Mr. Howard stated earlier, that it was necessary to at least have an outbound movement outside to work with the configuration of their parking lot. So this was a compromise to which we agreed that a limited access right out would be acceptable and will minimize the pedestrian and vehicular conflicts. But we did recommend initially to completely remove the access, but this was a compromise that as we stated, minimize the conflicts.
Helpful to hear.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Shum, I'm gonna, we'll have more to talk about, I'm sure. So let me move on and allow for the other speakers to come in. Let me just review who we have on the list, who's actually here. I have a Guru Mamatova. Are you here? Okay. Vanessa Hercules? No? Judy Blumenthal, I see you, so I know you are here. You can hear us okay?
Yes, sir.
And we can hear you too. We'll get back to you in a second. I have an Ole Podrihula.
I am here, sir. Thank you.
Okay, and I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. Mary Cook, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, great. And I think that's it. Is there anyone I have missed? I mean, these are the folks we have signed up, so these are the folks who are eligible to speak, but I'm just checking. Anybody else who believes they're supposed to be speaking? Okay, excellent. So let me go through in the order that we have there. If the other folks show up in the next bit, we'll certainly give them an opportunity to speak as well. You'll each have up to 3 minutes to speak, and we'll set a clock for you just to help keep you and us aware of the time. And I will start with Ms. Blumenthal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you could, Ms. Blumenthal, if you could identify your name and address for the record too.
Judy Blumenthal, 49th Avenue in College Park, Maryland. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. The proposed development has serious issues for the city of College Park, especially in North College Park. I'm asking that the safety and welfare of the residents of North College Park supersede allowances in the sector plan and that you deny the proposed construction. The sector plan has been overtaken by environmental trends and permanent changes. The proposed construction of a 6 to 7 story building with 313 multifamily dwelling units will negatively impact the safety and welfare of the surrounding neighborhoods and residents. Beginning with utility systems, there are several major issues. The proposed development will overload the already weakened gas lines. Recent Washington Gas attention to serious leaks in the city of College Park occurred in February and December of 2022. The latter caused Baltimore Avenue to be closed in both directions for several days. In 2021, within a 45-day period, Washington Gas responded to 8 gas leak odor calls in the city of College Park and made 25 leak repairs. Power grids cannot be maintained in our current environment. For example, the severe storm of July 2022 resulted in more than 27,000 customers in Prince George's County having problems. The most damage was in the College Park, Berwyn, and Greenbelt areas. Water mains are old and nearing the end of their useful life, as reported in College Park in 2013. Further stated, after more than 90 years of service, water and sewer is facing decaying pipes and valves. The water mains in College Park were originally installed in the 1920s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Another serious impact is the increase in traffic. As it now stands, emergency vehicles have difficulty reaching their destination promptly, and there's no safe evacuation route. New development will worsen this. Parking will overwhelm North College Park. It will become even more unmanageable. Cherokee Street will be more of a fire trap. The proposed construction for 1.5 cars per unit should be increased to 3 cars per unit because of an increase in 59.7 million residents now living in multi-generational housing units, with an increase of 58.4 million in 2019 alone. Along with people buying homes together, families buying homes together, there's a 772% increase. And with renting, I ask that you exercise your authority to deny the proposed construction. Thank you very much for your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Blumenthal. I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. And let me just comment real quick. First of all, I hear you loud and clear around the concerns around infrastructure, and certainly this comes up from time to time throughout the county. So that's not what's before us as part of the detailed site plan, but it's a real concern, and I hear you loud and clear. So it may be helpful to have some measure of conversation with our Department of Permits, Inspections, and Enforcement, DPI, around this very issue, and we can help facilitate that connection and just make sure your voice is heard around that, if that's helpful for you.
That'd be great. Thank you, sir.
Okay, all right. We'll make sure that that we have some measure of follow-up with you around that.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome. Okay, next on our list of commissioners, any other questions for Ms. Blumenthal since I took the initiative to ask some? Anything else? No? Okay, thank you all. Turn to Ole Podrihula.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ole, the last name Podrihula. I presently reside at 4 Ellis Circle in East Sandwich, Massachusetts, but I also own property at 4814 Delaware Street. My wife and I purchased there in 1976, and in the mid-90s, we found we had to move up to Massachusetts. We still own that property. We have a very big affinity and love for that particular area and for Prince George's County. I suggest that the proposed project for that area is going to be overburdensome, is too large, too dense, and will impose traffic impositions on a neighborhood where we've had people living there for over 40 years without these problems. I'd like to refer you to my letter in opposition. I'm not going to rehash that because I see the time is running on this, but I would like to suggest at this point in time that the traffic study, in my estimation, is flawed. There was the traffic study that I saw was dated in September of 2021. There was an indication that there was a recent one done. I haven't seen that. But the traffic study that I looked at, which was done in 2021, indicated that it was a view that the pandemic was still not over, that the traffic count made a 4% adjustment to the possibility that a lot of people were still telecommuting. It does not take into account the traffic that's going to be coming down south from the Beltway into the city, who don't want to be taking that turn on Cherokee Street. You're going to turn into the residential neighborhoods, primarily Delaware Street, Fox Street, which has a light, shoot down to the Rhode Island Avenue area, and then come around and come on to Cherokee Street from the east, heading to the entrance of the building there. There was nothing in the study to show what the proposed service area from Delaware Street to the project would have. No traffic counts there whatsoever, and any service vehicles coming into that building for moving, delivering items, when they leave, they're not going to get out onto Delaware Street. They're going to get their way out of there through the neighborhood. That wasn't even looked at by the traffic studies. When I lived there all those years, I never got onto Route 1 from Delaware Street. You just couldn't do it, and it was totally unsafe. You did it from Fox Street where there was a traffic light and you could move, or you go through Rhode Island Avenue. 6 stories, that should not be put there. The buffer should be stepped down from 2 to 3, which the district requires. I'm running out of time. Thank you for your consideration. Please don't pass this project. There's other projects that could go there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Padron. I appreciate you taking the time, and we hear you. Next, we have Mary Cook.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. In full disclosure, I'm the community liaison for Council Chair Tom Dernoga, but I'm speaking today as a 20-year resident of North College Park. I would like to add that I'm a former board member of Meals on Wheels and former president of the North College Park Community Association, NCPCA. First, let me say thank you to the Copelands for agreeing to work with Meals on Wheels. This organization, which serves residents not only from College Park, but Beltsville, Riverdale, Hyattsville, and other municipalities, is one that has been in existence for some time, and they are giving them the opportunity to return to College Park. I also applaud the fact that they are introducing affordable housing to College Park. Last June, NCPCA invited the RST developers to present to our group. There were mixed reactions to the project, and no position was taken at that time. Please understand that my objections are ones that many in North College Park have. I do not have to remind you that quality of life and retention of the character of the neighborhood are 2 priorities of the Route 1 sector plan. I have 3 issues that I will address today. They include ingress, egress, the step down, and lead. I really don't have to say anything more about that right in, right out. I think everyone has said it, and Ms. Shum did it exceptionally well. Honestly, I have to tell you that I used to avoid Rockville Pike at all costs. Now I avoid Route 1 at all costs. Regarding the step down, the applicant is correct that the sector plan does allow them to use a landscape buffer. which they have proposed to mitigate the impact of a 7-story structure next to a residential neighborhood. However, I don't think that any of you would appreciate looking up the street to a 7-story building, which takes away from the suburban surroundings. I urge the planning board to insist on a step down of 2 to 3 stories. And finally, regarding the LEED certification, the developers have stated that they are not seeking LEED Silver certification. It is seeking certification through an alternate standard which substantially complies with the intent of the sector plan. This alternate standard will not substantially impair implementation of the sector plan per the applicant. And after reading the home renovation website, from which they are comparing their to LEED certification, it appears that many of the items described would fit the requirements to attain silver LEED certification. If that is the case, why not become LEED certified, as has been required by the majority of construction in Prince George's County? I urge you to hold the developers to this standard, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. I appreciate you taking the time. Is there anyone else who signed up to speak? I want to go back to Guru Mamatova or Vanessa Hercules. Either one present? Okay, no. Commissioners, any questions for the folks who have spoken in opposition to this? Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you all very much for participating in this hearing. Much appreciated. So let me go to the applicant again. Actually, Ms. Shum, let me afford you the opportunity. You had something you wanted to bring up that was related to one of the issues that we were talking about. I want to give you a chance to do that because I want to give the applicant the last word with rebuttal and conclusion and close. So, Ms. Shum?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to go back and address Commissioner Dorner's question about complete streets. And I wanted to refer you to a condition that's been placed on this project. It's your staff's condition AP, and that requires that what we call tabletop crosswalks be provided along any driveway access to this project. So in other words, that gives priority to the pedestrian, or in this case, also the bicyclist, because there will be a cycle track along the frontage of this project. So that prioritizes those users over the vehicles using that as ingress and egress. So I think that's an important condition, and I think that helps to mitigate the fact that this frontage would be interrupted with another driveway. But again, it's an exceptionally long frontage, so it's not unusual to expect, perhaps another driveway at this location. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, if there's no other questions or no other comments, I'm going to turn it to the applicant for any rebuttal, if there is any, and for your close. Tom, Mr. Haller, you're muted. We don't have you yet. You're still muted.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. My screen went crazy for a second and I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself. I apologize. Thank you for the opportunity to address you again. I do want to respond to a couple of the comments that were made by the residents that testified. I want to mention first that I want to just talk a little bit more about the step down that a couple of the residents mentioned. The Route 1 sector plan does address what's called step back transitions. It's on page 238 of the sector plan, and where a property like this one is in a walkable node area, either across the street from or sharing a real property line with an existing area.
Hold on one sec. Okay, you can continue. We got it.
Sure. The sector plan says that a step back transition and or a landscape buffer shall be required. Normally, the setback requirement in the sector plan is if you abut a street is 0 feet to 24 feet. And for a rear yard setback, it's only 10 feet. And so in a situation like this, where a building is located at a right-of-way line across the street, which would be about a 50-foot distance, or is only 10 feet from a property line, a step down to 2 or 3 stories might be appropriate. But the sector plan also shows scenarios where no step down is proposed, but a landscape buffer is provided. In our particular instance, we have a unique opportunity because the property which is being acquired by RST includes two other lots that are outside of the sector plan area, but which allow for them to provide a buffer. And as staff noted in their staff report, that the buffer or step back applies to the area on the east side of 48th Avenue. And you can see on the image on the screen that area there showing a berm and landscaping on the property immediately across 48th Avenue. What that allows us to do is to provide a buffer that's 2 to 3 times as wide as what the landscape manual would normally require, and we're providing plant units that are more than double what the landscape manual would normally require. And in addition to that, we are stepping the building down to 5 stories. So as staff has evaluated and analyzed in their staff report, as the city staff also evaluated and analyzed, what we've proposed conforms to the sector plan requirements in a way that's slightly different than what's anticipated, but is consistent with the sector plan has asked for, which is landscape and or a step back. So I just wanted to address that specifically, just so the board was aware how we are addressing the compatibility with the adjoining neighborhood. And then I would also just like to comment that with regard to the traffic issues, those were fully evaluated, as we've discussed ad nauseum this morning, as part of the preliminary plan and the ADQ application that we filed earlier. And then the final thing I want to note, I think, is that going back to the discussion that you had with the city, you absolutely pinned it earlier. If the board were inclined or supportive of the concept of a right turn in, even though they may want to look at it further and would have to look at it further as part of the right in, right out, if the condition was not added to this site plan, we would then be forced to certify this site plan and then come back after the fact, if the board were to elect to reconsider it, and amend the site plan again. And it's the combination of the reconsideration process and the requirement to amend the site plan that we're trying to address here. So if the board were inclined to allow that movement, we understand we'd have to request the reconsideration. The board's not obligated to grant it, but we don't want to be in a position where we then would have to further amend the site plan. Timing is an important factor in this particular case, and so being able to get to plat is very important to us. And with that, I would conclude my my comments and be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Haller. That concludes the hearing portion of this, commissioners. It's us to deliberate. I mean, my first thought on this is that I like the idea of providing, legally appropriately providing some measure of flexibility, providing some options if there was a reconsideration that came our way. We'll take that up cleanly and without prejudging that at all. It may or may not qualify, but if it did, then at least the applicant would have options. And those are the options that actually, from what I hear, the majority of folks in the community and the city and the applicant are all in support of. So I'm okay going that direction, but I'm curious to see where you all are, commissioners. So take it away.
No, I'm in the same place, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for raising the question about 1R, because I think the way it's currently written, it kind of predisposes something that will happen. And I did like the planning director's distinction in that regard, or suggested alternative, if you will.
So I'm not supportive of the right in. I wouldn't have been supportive of the right out if we had that before us today, because I think both are inconsistent with complete streets. Like, I understand the idea of prioritizing pedestrian traffic with the raised crosswalks, and I appreciate that being pointed out. But the true prioritization is not to have them have any of their their path interrupted right there. We already have the streets, and that's enough interruption as it is if we're trying to really get to a real complete streets and urban kind of design. I'm supportive of the rest of the application, and I'm very eager to see this kind of a development with the affordable housing coming in. I think that the cause, just on a personal level, I know we're not supposed to rule on uses and stuff, but I'm very close to these kinds of causes, and I support the application completely. So for me, it's just, it's not anything to do with the use or anything. It's just the traffic part of it there. That's the one hiccup for me, that I would not vote in favor of that or a motion for that. However, if the motion does pass, then I think the right step to take is the conditional kind of finding like we have mentioned earlier. So I think I would be supportive of the conditional one. I'm just not supportive of it in general.
Understood. Other comments from commissioners?
Well, at this point, I'm definitely in support of the condition and the project as well, and would like to and appreciate all the citizens who've come to share their comments. I've worked at the University of Maryland for a very long time and understand a good bit about the traffic there, and any solutions that we can find, certainly I am in support of. And I think the staff has offered some suggestions and solutions to almost an impossible task of traffic in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Madam Vice Chair. Commissioner Giraldo.
Yeah, I concur in the comments of the Vice Chair. I mean, it's a great project. It's needed. There was discussions today about, in certain areas, about the middle income housing being absent in the county, as well as affordable housing, and this serves that purpose. The only concerns that I have is with pedestrian and bicycle safety. But I believe what the planning director has offered alternatives may be an effective compromise.
Thank you. I think it's clear where we are with this. So if there's no further deliberation on this, the only issue would be if there were a motion to this effect that reflects our discussion around this. I want to get the language right around the conditionality related to this. So,
yeah, Mr.
Ms. Gupta, do
Chair.
you want to weigh in? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your consideration. So staff does offer alternative language for that condition for your and other commissioners' review, if you allow me.
Yes, please.
So the alternative language could be, and this would ensure that the applicant does not need to come back to revise the detailed site plan. And we could read the condition as provide a do not enter sign to facilitate a limited ride out only access driveway from the site along US 1 Baltimore Avenue, including the profiles of the signage. Add a median to US 1 at the garage exit, subject to approval by the Maryland State Highway Administration. The DSP shall include an option for right-in access at the driveway, and if the applicant subsequently obtains subdivision approval, allowing for right-in access from US 1, this DSP option shall be permissible without requiring further approval of the DSP, and the signage will not be required. So this would be a revision to existing condition 1N. It would be a revision to condition 1N, and we would not need to add another condition 1R.
Okay.
But this would allow.
Right, that is... Go ahead, Ms. Gupta.
Yes, as I was just reiterating that the applicant would not need to come back and revise the DSP.
Okay, that's very, very helpful that you provide us with that language. I think that captures where we are. And I hear Commissioner Dorner, you loud and clear that this isn't the direction you'd like to go in general. I have some concerns about that as well. And I feel like this is a compromise that captures some of the concerns from the council member of the city of College Park. And it feels like this is an appropriate balance from my perspective. But it's neither here nor there, because there's just a question of whether there will be a reconsideration. And if there is, then we'll be taking that up at a later time. Commissioners, if there's no further discussion on this, staff has provided some language around what this flexibility
Mr.
language.
Chair, I just wanted to make a technical correction to that language.
Yes,
I believe
Council.
that it should, Delisa Coleman, Associate General Counsel for the record. The last sentence, I believe it should actually state the DSP shall include an option for right out access at the driveway, and if the applicant subsequently obtains subdivision approval, allowing for right in access from US 1.
That makes sense to me, Ms. Gupta. That feels appropriate for you as well?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Coleman, for that correction.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so we have what's before us. Is there a motion to that effect?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff to include the technical corrections to the finding as noted on the record by staff and approve alternative development district standards A1 through 13 as outlined in staff's report. In addition to approving DSP, what's the number? DSP-22015, along with the associated conditions as outlined in staff's report, and condition 1N shall be modified to reflect the revision as read into the record by staff and further amended by legal counsel. In addition to the conditions as modified by applicant exhibit number 1, with the exception of proposed new condition 1R, which shall be stricken.
Commissioner, I also requested correction to 2 findings where there are errors in the staff report and their findings.
I did note that, Ms. Gupta, in terms of the technical corrections.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Dorner. Is there any discussion on the motion, on the very well-read motion?
It's lunchtime.
Exactly.
Thank-
Under discussion, Commissioner Dorner.
Yeah, I thank the motion maker for keeping everything in line, because that was how that was going to come out, and as always, on point. Yeah, I just mentioned that in terms of like, if we do get to the stage of a reconsideration, I'm not supportive of the write-in. Even if we have the merits to do a reconsideration and go that far, I just want that to, at least how it's stated now, the applicant and what we've heard today, I would have voted against this if we had been considering just the applicant exhibit 1 or finding. Because I realize that when you come before us and you go through all these processes, it's not cheap to do these things, and you're on a limited budget. So as you look around, you kind of consider like whether or not it's worth it to try and get the right in. I want at least to be transparent on my end that I'm not supportive of the right in. I'm not supportive of the right out. But that wasn't before us in this capacity. So I just want you to realize that. But I think the way that the motion went today, it's clear. And if you do, I'm only one vote. Like if you do come back and you get it, then it could overturn and not go the way that I feel with it, and that's fine. But I do want you to know that as you're kind of going forward, so you have like all kind of information, at least at this point, that you can consider, because that's important as you get through developments. And I think the way this development is set up right now, it's great. It looks really good. And I think one person in the audience had mentioned about approvals of Silver LEED certifications. We don't actually require that. So I just want the others in the audience who came to thank them for coming today, but just realize we don't actually require that. It just happens that a lot of people will end up going in that direction because it's a common certification method that people use. Sometimes they get all the way up to platinum. But at least getting the criteria to me is more important than getting the certification, because the certification costs a lot of money. I live in a house that's completely LEED certified in terms of the criteria, the reason why I bought the house is because they didn't get the certification, and it was marketed at about $200,000 less as a result of that. So I'm not really concerned about the certifications if the quality standards are still up to that. And we're making efforts towards green and other kinds of good buildings that makes, I think the act and the intent is more important to me than getting a piece of paper saying that they met all the points that they had to accumulate, particularly on projects that are that have social needs and affordability kind of concerns. It's just an additional cost on the developer, and I don't really see the importance of having that certification if everything else is being met, but you're just not paying for certifiers and people to come out and getting that accolade. So that's it on discussion for me.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. I believe the motion was made by Commissioner Washington and seconded by Commissioner Dorner. If there's no further discussion, Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye, and I thank everybody for attending and the input of the community.
Thank you. I join with those remarks. I vote aye, and the ayes have it 5-0. Folks, thanks everybody again, as Commissioner Giraldo said, for your participation in this case. It's an exciting project. We are going to take a break. I'm going to suggest we take a half-hour break. We're in a bit of a time crunch. I am for later in the afternoon. So it's a couple minutes after 1. If we can handle this, let's come back and start up at 1:30, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. See you all back then. We're on recess until 1:30.
Thank you.
Folks, Commissioner Dorner is running just a minute or two behind, so let us accommodate, and we'll start up in just a couple minutes. And as I noted before, I'm in a bit of a time crunch, so Mr. Hunt and team, if we can focus on being efficient with our words and see if we can get out of here by 2:30.
Is that a vote?
I think we have a thumbs up already, so.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Another one.
At the risk of sharing, being too personal, I just want to note that yesterday was James Hunt's birthday.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Happy birthday. We got a sing.
Thank you.
Birthday. Was that
You
by
said- you
design,
told me-
Mr. Chairman, so we could not sufficiently embarrass him?
Exactly. Exactly.
21
You wanna-
again?
Absolutely. All day, every day. Embracing it.
But come on, if you have to say, I can't imagine a person who it would be harder to play guess the age game than James Hunt. I have no idea.
Nah.
I think we'd have arranged, right? So, and of course, gentlemen don't tell, so you're not going to tell us. I understand.
Someone just messaged me 65. No, I have no issue telling my age. I'm 43. I am officially 43 now.
All right.
Wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, in honor of Mr. Hunt's birthday, I'll keep my presentation to the amount in seconds to the amount of years he is.
Wait a minute, Mr. Giggles. I don't think that came out right.
Oh, I heard it.
I will keep my presentation to the amount of seconds of Mr. Hunt's years.
Oh, seconds, that's fine. Okay.
Seconds is good. All right.
We'll take that.
All right, we have Commissioner Dorner with us as well. We got a full complement. Let us come back from recess and take up item 6 with alacrity. Preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21008 Westphalia Town Center Phase 5. The attorney for the applicant is Mr. Tedesco. Staff report is Mr. Diaz-Campbell. And Mr. Diaz-Campbell, take it away.
Okay.
Good morning, or good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine, thank you.
All right, thank you. So yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I'm Eddie Diaz-Campbell, player 2 with the subdivision section. Item number 6 on the agenda is the preliminary plan subdivision for Westphalia Town Center Phase 5, 4-21008. The subject project proposes 133 lots and 7 parcels for development of 133 townhouse units. The proposed subdivision is located within the boundaries of a recently approved detailed site plan, DSP-19062, and has been submitted for the purpose of converting previously approved condominium dwelling units into fee simple ownership. As such, the current plan only proposes additional lots compared to previous approvals, not additional dwellings. There is one item of additional backup for this case, which was received before the noon deadline on January 17. This is an exhibit with the applicant's requested revisions to the recommended conditions of approval. Staff is in full agreement with the applicant on the proposed revisions, and no citizens have signed up to speak against this application. Staff is recommending approval of preliminary plan subdivision 4-21008, approval of Type 1 Tree Conservation Plan TCP1-014-08-04, on approval of a variation from Section 24-128B7A of the prior subdivision regulations, subject to the conditions of approval listed in the staff report, as modified by applicant's Exhibit 1. If requested by the board, I can give a full presentation on the findings for this case. Otherwise, this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Commissioners, any questions for staff before we turn to the applicant? Seeing none, Mr. Tedesco, you can take it away if there's anything you want to add.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the planning board. For the record, Matthew Tedesco, the law firm McNamee, Hosey and Greenbelt, on behalf of the applicant D.R. Horton, Inc. We do have a number of the team with us this afternoon from Rogers Consulting, Mike Lenhart from Lenhart Traffic, and representatives of the applicant D.R. Horton. First and foremost, happy birthday or belated birthday to Mr. Hunt. Wishing you all the best and thank you for all that you do. For all of us on this side of the street, we greatly appreciate your efforts. But with that, Mr. Chairman, this case is very straightforward. These units were previously approved with a detailed site plan, actually almost 2 years ago to the day. And this preliminary plan is a preliminary plan within a preliminary plan that simply seeks to provide lots around the previously approved units that were approved with the detailed site plan as condominium towns. So with that, we are in agreement with the staff's recommendations. We did have an applicant's exhibit, which staff referenced in its presentation this morning as applicant's exhibit 1 that we are all in agreement with. And those are just housekeeping items related to the fact that there's already a number of approvals in place, RFAs recorded, relating to these new lots. So with that, Mr. Chairman, unless there's any questions, we would respectfully request the board's approval of the preliminary plan 4-21008 and its accompanying TCP1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. And commissioners, there's no one else signed up to speak on this matter. So what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve preliminary plan 4-21008, TCP1-014-08-04, and variation from section 24-128B7A, along with the conditions as outlined in staff's report, and it's further modified by applicant exhibit number 1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you. We have item 7, detailed site plan, DET 2022-001, Westphalia Business Center 1 and 2. This is there's a request to approve a continuance to February 2, 2023. The attorney for the applicant actually did not register to speak in the time allotted, but Ms. Kosak, I believe you can cover things for this. Take it away.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Item 7 for Westphalia Business Center. In a memorandum dated January 5th. The applicant's representative provided a waiver of the 70-day action limit and requested a continuance to the hearing date of February 2nd to allow time for additional information to be provided. As you stated, the applicant did not sign up to speak today, but in further communications with staff sent after the Tuesday deadline, they did revise the continuance request to March 2nd, 2023. Therefore, staff is now recommending approval of the request for continuance till the planning board hearing of March 2nd, 2023. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kozak. So what would be before, and we do have folks who signed up to speak who I believe are on the line, but so then what's before us is a motion to approve a continuance, or what's before us would be a continuance until March 2nd, 2023. We have two folks who are signed up to speak. Just want to see if they're online. Carissa Scott. No, and then Alex.
Good afternoon.
Oh, is that Ms. Scott?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute.
No problem.
Since it's being continued to March 2nd, I'll hold my comments until then.
Okay,
if that's
thank you,
okay.
Ms. Scott. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's fine, and we appreciate you taking the time to be here today. Ms. Votaw, you have anything you want to bring to us? And again, what's before us is the continuance until March 2nd, 2023, but the floor is yours.
Understood. We have no objection to that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sure. There's nobody else signed up to speak, and then the hearing is the discussion on this is closed. Commissioners, what's your pleasure on the continuance?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the request for continuance to hearing date March 2nd, 2023.
Second.
Motion and a second. Motion is Commissioner Washington. Second is Commissioner Giraldo. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it. 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Kosak. Next, we have item 8. 8? Yeah. Preliminary plan of subdivision PPS 2022-003 Brandywine Crossing Apartments, Phase 2. Mr. Diaz-Campbell is the who give the staff presentation. Mr. Tedesco is the attorney for the applicant. I believe we do have somebody who signed up to speak as well in opposition. I'm going to turn it to Mr. Diaz-Campbell for a brief staff presentation, and then we'll hear from the applicant. Mr. Diaz-Campbell. You're on mute.
Thank you. So for the record, once again, I am Eddie Diaz-Campbell, planner of 2 in the subdivision section. Item number 8 on the agenda is preliminary plan subdivision for Brandywine Crossing Apartments Phase 2, PPS-2022-003. The subject project proposes one parcel for development of 221 multifamily units. As a matter of housekeeping, there is one item of additional backup for this case, which was received before the noon deadline on January 17. This is an exhibit with the applicant's requested revisions to recommend conditions of approval. Next slide, please. The site is located in the southern part of Prince George's County within planning area 85A and Council District 9. Next slide, please. More specifically, the site is located on the east side of Mapic Business Drive, approximately 1,280 feet north of its intersection with Timothy Branch Drive. Next slide, please. The zoning map shows that the site is in the core area of the Town Activity Center, or TACC zone. Lands to the south, west, and northwest are also in the TACC zone, while lands to the east and northeast are the edge area of the Town Activity Center zone. Further to the east are lands in the industrial heavy zone. Next slide, please. The area photograph shows that the property is currently vacant on its western half and wooded on its eastern half. Also visible in this area are the Brandywine Crossing Shopping Center, located to the west of Prospect Business Drive, the Timothy Branch Stream, located to the east, vacant land which is to be a future industrial park, further to the east, and vacant land which is to be a future multifamily development, abutting to the south. In addition, the Villages of Timothy Branch development is located to the north of this development, though it is not visible on this slide. Next slide, please. This photo shows an overview of the site from an aerial perspective. Next slide, please. The site map shows that the site generally slopes downward towards the Timothy Brandt Stream to the east. A small portion of the 100-year floodplain, which is not proposed to be impacted, is located on the eastern edge of the site. Next slide, please. The master plan right-of-way map shows that the site has frontage on Mattapique Business Drive, a major collector roadway, shown in blue on this slide. To the north and east of the site are portions of Mattawan Drive, an arterial roadway, shown in red. The two existing portions of the Mattawan Drive right-of-way have yet to be connected through the property, located just to the north of the subject property. Though the conceptual alignment shown in this slide suggests otherwise, the site will have no direct frontage on Mattawan Drive, and no right-of-way dedication is needed for that road. Noise generated by the future arterial has been studied with this preliminary plan and will be further studied with a detailed site plan. Findings related to noise are given in finding 12 of the technical staff report. Right-of-way dedication is required to Mattapique Business Drive to achieve an alternate 100-foot wide right-of-way. The applicant is proposing to dedicate some of the needed right-of-way with this plan subdivision and keep the remaining needed right-of-way in private ownership, with the caveat that it will be dedicated upon demand by the operating agency. This strategy has been used by other preliminary plans along Mattapique Business Drive, and staff finds it acceptable for this specific roadway. Findings regarding the right-of-way dedication are given in finding 6 of the technical staff report. Next slide, please. The preliminary plan shows one parcel outlined in red. Mattapique Business Drive is shown in blue, and the prime management area is shown outlined in pink. At the time of this preliminary plan subdivision, staff considers the locations of the buildings shown to be conceptual in nature. Building placement will be approved at the time of detailed site plan. Next slide, please. This application is subject to the Woodland Conservation Ordinance, and a revised Type 1 tree conservation plan has been filed with the application. The overall TCP1 is associated with the Brandywine 301 Industrial Park, a prior preliminary plan covering the site and the surrounding area. The TCP1 has been revised several times with various small preliminary plans in the area, which covered a portion of the original industrial park area, similar to this preliminary plan. This slide shows the portion of the TC1 covering the subject site. The property boundary is shown outlined in red. Mattapique Business Drive is shown in blue, and the prime management area is shown in pink. Proposed buildings are shown in yellow. Woodland preservation areas are shown in bright green, while woodland reforestation areas are shown in light green. No specimen trees are proposed to remove with the application, and no impacts to the prime management area have been requested. However, the TCP1 does show an impact for grading in the northwest corner of the property. Since this PMA impact has not been requested, staff recommends that prior to signature rule of the preliminary plan subdivision, the Type 1 tree conservation plan shall be revised to remove the proposed grading within the PMA. Next slide, please. The proposed development includes several private recreational facilities for the future residents, including a pool, courtyard, fitness center, and lounge. Staff found that the sidewalk, which goes almost all the way around the central building, could act as an additional recreational amenity if it is extended to completely encircle the building. The sidewalk would connect to the Timothy Branch Trail proposed along Mattapique Business Drive, where additional recreational walking opportunities can be found. This slide shows the applicant's proposed pedestrian circulation on site in blue, and the area where staff recommends the sidewalk be extended in orange. Next slide, please. In conclusion, subdivision staff recommends that the planning board adopt the findings and approve preliminary plan subdivision BPS-2022-003, Brandywine Crossing Apartments Phase 2, and Type 1 Tree Conservation Plan TCP1-026-91-05, subject to the conditions contained in the staff report. The applicant communicated proposed revisions to the findings and to the conditions of approval recommended in the report, which are included on the record. The purpose of the revisions is to clarify staff's recommendation for the extended sidewalk and to allow for additional discussion at the time of detailed site plan regarding locations of long-term bicycle storage on the site. Staff is in agreement with these revised conditions. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Commissioners, questions for staff before we turn to the applicant? Seeing none, Mr. Tedesco.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Again, Matt and members of the planning board. Again, Matthew Tedesco on behalf of the applicant, Brandywine Crossing Apartments 2 LLC, which is a subsidiary of Trammell Crow Residential. We have representatives from Trammell Crow on the line, Mr. Matthew Haar and Alyssa Scheinbaum, as well as our engineers, Bowler Engineering and Mike Lenhart from Lenhart Traffic. and our architects from Dwell Design, notwithstanding that this is a preliminary plan, and we'll be before you sometime in the near future with the future detailed site plan. In the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, I will submit on Mr. Diaz-Campbell's very thorough review of the application as well as the staff report. Mr. Campbell did highlight our applicant's Exhibit 1, which has recommended clarifications to findings related to the sidewalk connection, as well as future discussions with staff on the locations of long-term bike storage at the time of detailed site plan. Those are the genesis of the requested changes, which staff is in agreement with. We appreciate staff's review as well as their consideration of our requested changes and their support for that. So with that, Mr. Chair, again, in the interest of time, I'll cut my presentation short. Respectfully request the board's approval of this preliminary plan with conditions and findings as modified by applicant's Exhibit 1. Unless there's any questions, we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant before I turn to folks in the public who want to speak? None? Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. So we have, I believe we just have one person signed up to speak on this. We have a Russell Cash with Flow Church. Is it Pastor Cash? Are you on the line? Let me just take a second. I'm looking at staff. Don't see. Okay, I don't see Mr. Cash. Our staff does not see Mr. Cash. Let's give it one more sec here. Okay, so then we have nobody signed up to speak. Nobody who is speaking on this. Commissioners, any other questions for either the staff or the applicant? If none, I'll close the hearing. And what is your pleasure, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve PPS-2022-003 and TCP1-026-19-05, along with the conditions as outlined in staff's report and is further amended by applicant Exhibit number 1.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you again, Mr. Tedesco, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Next, we have item 9, preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21051 Glenwood Hills. Mr. Diaz-Campbell is again presenting, giving the staff presentation. Mr. Giggles is the attorney for the applicant. I do not believe we have anyone. We do have folks signed up to speak on this, yes. So let me turn it to Mr. Diaz-Campbell for the staff report, and then we'll hear from the applicant. Mr. Diaz-Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I had planned to give a full presentation for this case, given the complexity of the staff recommendations. But we are in full agreement with the applicant on the conditions of approval. There's no one signed up to speak in opposition. There are a couple of people signed up to speak in support. So just want to see if you would like the full presentation or something more abbreviated.
Let me ask you, commissioners, and feel free to object if you do. I wouldn't mind just a few slides just to get an overview of this for us and for the public. I think an abbreviated presentation would be appropriate. Less in the weeds and more give us an overview of the project.
That's sufficient.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful, particularly on anything that might be in any kind of disagreement with the applicant. If you're in agreement with all the items in applicant Exhibit 1, then we don't need to cover those things.
Yeah. All right, so that's, if you can figure that out, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Commissioner Giraldo, I'm sorry.
No, I agree. I'm just kind of concerned with some of the environmental and toxic matters. That's all.
Okay. Make sure that gets addressed. So Mr. Diaz-Campbell, is that clear enough?
So perhaps semi-abbreviated presentation?
Yeah, do an abbreviated presentation, better presentation.
Okay. All right. In that case, once again, for the record, I am Eddie Diaz-Campbell, Planner 2 with the subdivision section. Item number 9 on the agenda is the preliminary plan sergeant for Glenwood Hills, 4-21051. The subject project proposes 126 lots and 37 parcels for development of 636 dwelling units and 825,000 square feet of commercial and industrial development. The site is subject to a recent conceptual site plan amendment, CSP-88020-03, which was approved by the Planning Board on December 8, 2022. There are 4 items of additional backup for this case. The first is an exhibit with the applicant's requested revisions to recommended conditions of approval. Second is a staff memo regarding new material the applicant submitted regarding buried waste matter and debris on the property. And third and fourth items are the new material itself, including a phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment and an exhibit showing the locations of the buried debris. Next slide, please. Site is located in the western part of Prince George's County within planning area 75A and Council District 6. Next slide, please. More specifically, the previous slide, please. More specifically, the site is located south of Maryland 214 at its intersection with Pepper Mill Drive. Next slide, please. The zoning map shows that most of the site is in the residential multifamily 48 or RMF 48 zone. A portion of the property on the western side is in the residential single family 65 or RSF 65 zone. Next slide, please. Property zoning notwithstanding, this preliminary plan subdivision is accepted for review under the prior zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations which are effective prior to April 1st, 2022. Pursuant to section 24-1703 of the subdivision regulations. Under the prior zoning ordinance, this site was in the mixed-use transportation or MXT zone and the one-family detached residential or R55 zone. This preliminary plan subdivision was evaluated according to the standards of those zones. Next slide, please.
Go to the next slide.
Under the current zoning, most of the property is in the military installation overlay zone for height. Next slide, please. However, this application was evaluated according to the standards of the prior military installation overlay zone for height, which are effective prior to April 1st, 2022. Conformance to these standards is discussed in finding 3 of the technical staff report. Next slide, please. The photograph shows that the property is currently wooded. North of the site is Maryland 214. East of the site is land owned by Pepco, which is used for overhead power transmission lines in a substation. West of the site are neighborhoods of single-family detached dwellings as well as Central High School. And south of the site is the Walker Mill Middle School. There is also a Pepco-owned right-of-way bisecting the site near its northern end, which is used for power lines. Next slide, please. This photo shows another view of the site from an aerial perspective. Next slide, please. The site map shows that the site has a hilly topography and that 3 stream valleys traverse it. Next slide, please. Master plan right-of-way map shows that the site fronts on Maryland 214, a master plan arterial road to the north. Roadway dedication of 60 feet from the center line of this roadway is required and will be provided with this preliminary plan. The map also shows Karen Boulevard, a collector roadway, which will traverse the site from north to south. While right-of-way was previously dedicated for this roadway with a prior preliminary plan of subdivision, the current project proposes to vacate the existing right-of-way and dedicate a new alignment. Vacation petition B-21008 may be approved by the planning director following the approval of this preliminary plan. Next slide, please. The 8 critical intersections determined to be impacted by development are shown by the blue circles on this slide and are further described in detail in the staff report. The analysis performed by staff found that all these intersections will operate at an acceptable level of service, except for the intersection of Maryland 214, Pepper Mill Drive, and the future Karen Boulevard. A new traffic signal is needed to offset the site impacts at this location, and staff recommends that a signal be provided consistent with State Highway Administration standards. Next slide, please. The preliminary plan shows 126 lots and 37 parcels. This slide shows the entire site outlined in red. The next 2 slides, I'll go into greater detail on the site layout. Next slide, please. On this slide, proposed lots and parcels are outlined in red. Existing and proposed public roads are shown in dark blue, and proposed private streets are shown in light blue. Primary management area is shown outlined in pink. The northern half of the site is proposed to feature vertical mixed-use multifamily and commercial development on the 2 parcels in between Maryland 214 and the Pepco right-of-way, which bisects the site. Specifically, 550 multifamily units and 50,000 square feet of commercial development are proposed in this area. On the west side of the slide can be seen the proposed townhouse development, which consists of 126 single-family attached units. In between the 2 stream valleys, shown within the PMA on the east side of the site, there is an area of high ground which will serve as an industrial parcel for warehouse development. Next slide, please. The south side of the site features 5 additional industrial parcels for warehouse development on the east side of Karen Boulevard. Total industrial square footage proposed is 775,000 square feet. There is 1 parcel on the west side of Karen Boulevard, which is proposed to be used as a parking lot. All the remaining parcels shown on this slide will be dedicated to a property owners association for use as open space. Adequate water and sewerage, fire, police, and rescue facilities are available to serve the site. Next slide, please. Two variation requests have been submitted with the application. The first is from section 24-128B7A, which requires that when lots in the MXT zone are proposed to have rear alley access, they must front on a public street. Staff recommends approval of the variation request as discussed in finding 7 of the technical staff report. Next slide, please. Second variation request is from section 24-121A3 of the subdivision regulations. This section requires that when lots are proposed adjacent to a roadway of arterial classification or higher, they shall be designed to front on an interior street or service road. Staff is also recommending approval of this variation request to permit 2 points of direct access to Maryland 214, as shown in the red circles on this slide. Next slide, please. This application is subject to the Woodland Conservation Ordinance, and a revised TC1 has been filed with the application. The TC1 was most recently revised at CSP-88020-03, conceptual site plan amendment immediately preceding this plan and application. There are minimal changes between the TC1 approved alongside the CSP and the TCP1 submitted with this application. This slide shows in green the woodland preservation and regeneration areas, in yellow the primary management area impacts, and with the red X's the cessation tree removals, which were previously approved on the northern half of the site. Not shown on the TC1 or in the natural resources inventory upon which it is based are areas of buried waste matter and debris that were found on site. The buried debris were first brought to the attention of staff on January 11 this month. The Department of Permitting, Inspection, and Enforcement, through their approval of the site Stormwater Management Concept Plan 48714-2021-01, has required that the debris be completely removed from the subject site. Staff's recommended conditions of approval are consistent with this requirement, and staff is recommending an additional condition of approval not listed in the technical staff report to ensure the natural resources inventory is updated to show the buried debris prior to acceptance of the detailed site plan or the certification of the preliminary plan subdivision, whichever comes first. The condition will also require that the forest stand delineations be updated, as some areas impacted by the debris may be disqualified as woodlands. This additional condition is necessary prior to acceptance of the DSP in order to allow analysis with the Type 2 tree conservation plan of how the debris affects the on-site woodland preservation and limits of disturbance. Changes to the woodland preservation areas may be needed with the Type 2 tree conservation plan compared to the Type 1. Additional impacts to the primary management area may also be necessary. Further discussion of this issue is given in the staff memo, including the additional backup. Next slide, please. This slide again shows the woodland preservation and regeneration areas, primary management area impacts, and specimen tree removals previously approved on the southern half of the site. With this PPS and its accompanying Type 1 tree conservation plan, there is one revision proposed to the southernmost primary management area impact, which will be discussed in the next slide. Next slide, please. At the time of the CSP amendment, Impact 4 was partially supported by staff, pending additional justification from the applicant. For the purpose of having separate analysis, the impact was split into two parts for the current Type 1 tree conservation plan. Impact 4 is for the development of Karen Boulevard, and Impact 4A is for stormwater outfall, driveway access, and part of a microbioretention feature associated with the industrial development. With this permit plan and the current TCP1, staff is recommending that both Impacts 4 and 4A be approved, as discussed in finding 13 of the technical staff report. Next slide, please. With this preliminary plan application, the applicant originally proposed to meet the mandatory dedication of parkland requirement with private on-site recreation facilities pursuant to section 24-135 of the prior subdivision regulations. Staff is recommending, and the applicant has agreed, that a portion of the mandatory dedication requirement should be met with the applicant's support of the Central Avenue Connector Trail. This is a priority project for the Department of Parks and Recreation in this part of the county, which will provide access to the Aston Road and Morgan Boulevard metro stations, as well as other amenities in the community. This slide shows the most recently proposed route of the CACT and the segment that the Department of Parks and Recreation is seeking to have constructed with this development. The bulk of the segment is, excuse me. The bulk of the segment is located on the strip of land owned by Pepco, previously discussed. Pepco's concurrence will be needed in order for the CACT to be built on their land. Depending on the final route of the trail, concurrence may also be needed from the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority as well, should a portion of the trail be built on their land. As discussed in finding 5 of the staff report, staff is of the belief that concurrence from the necessary property owners will be obtained before construction of the development begins. Nevertheless, staff recognize that the property owner's timely concurrence is not guaranteed, and so staff agrees, in principle, with certain revisions to the recommended conditions of approval, which the applicant has submitted on the record. The purpose of these revisions is to allow mandatory dedication to be met either by the applicant directly designing and construction of the portion of the trail shown here, or by the applicant providing a contribution towards the trail's future construction, an amount not to exceed 50% of the value of recreational facilities the applicant is required to provide. Staff agrees that should the Department of Parks and Recreation and the applicant not be in concurrence, that all necessary agreements, easements, and permits for the trail construction have been secured at the time the applicant is seeking permits for residential development. This monetary contribution, together with the private on-site recreation facilities, will serve to meet mandatory parkland dedication. Staff is recommending some changes to condition language provided by the applicant, as well as some revisions to staff report findings, which are not in the applicant's exhibit requesting revisions to conditions of approval. These will be read into the record at the end of this presentation. Central Avenue Connector Trail is also part of the applicant's requirement to provide off-site bicycle and pedestrian facilities pursuant to section 24-121.01 of the prior subdivision regulations. The applicant submitted a bicycle and pedestrian impact statement, which recommended 5 off-site improvements recommended by DPI and the Department of Public Works and Transportation. These include pedestrian signal poles and related amenities, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and updated crosswalks. The improvements are listed in finding 6 of the staff report. The cost cap for off-site bicycle and pedestrian improvements is $614,638.15, according to the BPIS. And the 5 recommended improvements add up to about $260,159. Staff is recommending, and the applicant agrees, that the remaining funds under the cost cap be directed towards the construction of the CACT trail segment, recommended to be constructed with this preliminary plan. Next slide, please. In conclusion, subdivision staff recommends that the planning board adopt the findings and approve preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21051, Glenwood Hills, Type 1 Tree Conservation Plan TSP1-066-94-04, as well as variations from section 24-128B7A and section 24-121A3, subject to the 26 conditions contained in the staff report and the additional condition 27 in the staff memo contained in the additional backup. The applicant communicated proposed revisions to condition of approval recommended in the report, which are included on the record. Staff is in agreement with the applicant's proposed revisions to conditions 11, 13, 13F, 16, 25, and 26. Staff is in agreement with the revisions to conditions 1A, 8, and 10, with additional revisions recommended by staff, which I will read into the record shortly. Staff has concerns with conditions 1A, 8, and 10, is also dependent on adding a new condition 28, which I will read into the record. The applicant communicated a proposed revision to condition 27, which is not on the record, but with which staff agrees, and so I will read that revision into the record. Finally, staff is not in concurrence with the applicant's proposed revision to condition 25B. However, the applicant has withdrawn their request to have this condition revised. So, beginning my reading into the record, staff recommends that condition 1A reads as follows. Add a note on the preliminary plan assumption to state that the mandatory dedication of parkland requirement is being addressed by providing on-site recreation facilities and the design and construction of, or a contribution in an amount not to exceed 50% of the on-site recreational facilities valuation 2, segment 4 of the Central Avenue Connector Trail for service area 5 to meet the recreational needs of the projected population. Condition 8 should read as follows. Prior to approval of residential building permits for the development, the applicant and the applicant's heirs, successors, and/or assignees shall submit a performance bond, letter of credit, or other suitable financial guarantee for construction of the on-site recreational facilities. Condition 10 should read, prior to approval of building permits for residential development, and provide the applicant and the Prince George County Department of Parks and Recreation, Parks, are in concurrence that all necessary agreements, easements, and permits to allow construction of the segment 4 portion of the Central Avenue Connector Trail on PEPCO and/or Wilmota property have been secured. The applicant shall submit a performance bond, letter of credit, or other suitable financial guarantees to Parks for its contributions per conditions number 1A and 16F, and construct segment 4 with those and other funds to be supplemented by Parks as deemed necessary for the design and construction, following the 30% design documents of the Central Avenue Connector Trail, 30% design project, early construction drawings and final report, Appendix G. If at the time applicant is seeking permits for residential development, Parks and the applicant are not in concurrence that all necessary agreements, easements, and permits have been secured, the applicant's contribution of the amounts to Parks shall suffice to satisfy its remaining mandatory recreation and BPIS requirements for financial contributions towards the segment 4 Central Avenue Connector Trail. Condition 27 should read, prior to signature approval of the preliminary plan assumption or the acceptance of the detailed site plan, whichever comes first, the applicant shall update the natural resources inventory to identify the areas of debris in accordance with the phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment or the most current delineation. The forest stand delineation shall also be reevaluated to determine if the areas containing debris still qualify as woodlands. Condition 28 should read, at the time of detailed site plan, the applicant shall submit a draft public recreational facilities agreement, RFA, for the Central Avenue Connector Trail to the Department of Parks and Recreation for review. Finally, the findings of the resolution, including the Park and Recreation and environmental findings, will be updated as described in Staff Exhibit 1 and to account for the revised conditions. Again, to summarize, staff agrees with the applicant's revisions to conditions 11, 13, 13F, 16, 25, and 26. Staff agrees with the applicant's revisions to conditions 1A, 8, and 10, with the modifications I just read. Staff and the applicant agree that condition 25B should not be revised. There are two new conditions I read into the record, 27 and 28, with which the applicant agrees. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Questions for staff, commissioners?
Just a clarifying question. Mr. Diaz-Campbell, on your staff exhibit number 1, you're also or at least in the record is proposed added language to one of the findings. Should that still be incorporated?
Yes, the additional finding that is in a staff exhibit 1 should still be incorporated.
Great, thank you.
Other questions for staff?
Yeah, Mr. Diaz-Campbell, can you just read off again, before you get to like the 1A, 8, and 10, the other conditions that you're in full agreement with? What numbers they were?
So the ones we are in full agreement with, as stated in applicant's exhibit 1, are 11, 13, 13F, 16, 25, and 26. The ones that we are in agreement with, if they are modified in the way I read into the record, are 1A, 8, and 10.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll turn to the applicant, Mr. Gingles. Take it away.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Andre Gingles with offices in Laurel, Maryland. I have with me today representing Berman Enterprises, Mr. Brian Berman, along with Tom Aylward, and our great consulting staff of Gutchick, Little, and Weber. They're all in the room together should we have questions. Appreciate the very thorough work done by Mr. Eduardo Diaz-Campbell, leading the staff to a lot of discussions on a variety of issues, all of which have been resolved as he has read those revised conditions and new conditions into the record. And we concur with all of that and ask for your favorable recommendation. And that's 43 seconds.
In honor of Mr. Hunt's birthday, we will thank you, Mr. Gingles. If there's no questions from Mr. Gingles, we will turn to our speakers sheet. I've got two folks who are signed up to speak. I believe they're in favor of this. We have Mark Falzone and we have Belinda Queen. Mr. Falzone, are you on the line?
Let me, what, Ms. Phillips, I'm going to speak.
All right. And Ms. Queen, you are on the line, but we'll give
Yes.
Mark a second too.
Yeah.
No, I don't see him. So Ms. Queen, we'll turn to you. The floor is yours. You have 3 minutes to speak. Up to 3 minutes. We'll put a clock up there just to help us manage the time. Good to see you, and take it away.
Good to see you all. I won't be 3 minutes. I'll actually be brief. You guys know that we're definitely in favor of the project. I'm speaking on behalf of the Central Coalition and the community of Wilburn, which is an established community and established coalition. We have been in this community for years. We are excited about the Glenwood project. We're more excited about it. It's the first project coming down the Blue Line corridor. And you know, so much is coming down that corridor. We see great things coming into our area, and we're so deserving of it. It's been blocked so many. I've been listening and listening to so many things, and I hear people concerns, especially when you have the concerns about people being conservative with the trees and all the other things. But we got to remember, we're a diverse county, and what you may be concerned about in your part of the county, unfortunately, we're not as concerned about it because people move to this part of the county for certain things, and people may move to Hyattsville for other things, and people may move to Bowie for other things. And that's what makes Prince George's County a diverse county. But we're excited about the Glenwood, so we definitely want you to support this project. But in all that you do, I honestly want to say at this point to say thank you, because I've been listening to you. You guys have been doing a great job. But I ask that you guys please keep an opening mind on these projects, because I've been listening to a lot. Just keep in mind that we are diverse people. And I sent an email, inbox to Mr. Chapano, letting them know that, you know what, some people who have disability may not be able to look to the right when they turn their right. Some may be the opposite, to the left. So when we have different parts of the county, people looking to move where they may be comfortable with. Maybe they have a left turn because that's where they can drive more safely, turning to the left. And the same thing for the right. So in all we do, no matter what it is, let's be diverse. And remember, we have different people who are very diverse, and let our decisions be made for everybody in this county, all who live. But I do want to say again, thank you for all you do. We're excited about the Glenwood project. The coalition is 100% in the report, and the community of Wilburn is definitely 100% in support of this project. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. Any questions for Ms. Queen, commissioners? let me just say thank you for taking the time to join us, and thank you for your leadership in the community and all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who signed up to speak? Mr. Falzone, do we have you on the line? We do not. I will turn it back over to the applicant in case there's anything you want to add in terms of rebuttal, which I doubt, or any kind of close.
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Yes, Commissioner Giraldo.
But for the applicant, I just want to know, Mr. Gingles, in terms of what's the plan to ameliorate the toxic soils, given that it's going to be a residential community? That's the concern I have.
You're on mute, Mr. Gingles.
So again, on the record, Andre Gingles. Commissioner, we've been talking with DPI. It's part of the reason we ended up withdrawing a revision to 25, and staff added a couple additional conditions. So as we've been having more detailed discussions about the soil and the various litter that needs to be cleaned up, we've sort of prioritized trying not to utilize machinery in various areas, particularly in areas where we're sort of showing those areas to be preservation. To the extent that DPI, as we provide them additional reports, decides that there is subsurface matter that needs to be removed, we will absolutely go in there and have to remove that. And that was one of your staff's concerns, that it may ultimately be in an area that is for conservation, and therefore the preservation requirements may need to be modified. But essentially, our view is that we want to remove the trash where there is trash, particularly stuff that we can see on surface that we feel we can get out, particularly where it can be gotten out without machinery. But to the extent something's identified that we have to remove, we absolutely will remove it and remediate the site as deemed by DPI.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just note, one last note for you is that where the residential development is proposed, both in the multifamily and the single family attached areas, that's not where those issues have been identified.
No, I understand that, but I'm just thinking with people walking the grounds, that's all. I mean, I understand that the residential is out there, but you know, that's my concern.
Yeah,
but no, you've answered it.
Thank you, sir.
And dare I say, Commissioner Giraldo, that means for people and dogs walking around as well, right?
Exactly.
Just to be clear, I appreciate it.
And I'm sure there's going to be dog parks. I'm sure there's going to be dog parks as well with water.
And it's not near the dog park.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Gingles, anything in closing you want to add?
Just in closing, when we get to the next plan, we'll provide the more fuller presentation. And like everyone else, happy birthday, sir.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes the hearing. Commissioners, what is your pleasure on this issue? Or is there any deliberation before we consider action? Nope. Okay, Ms. Washington.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff to include the added finding language detailed in staff exhibit number 1 and approve preliminary plan 4-21051 TCP 1-066-94-04 variation from section 24-128B7A and variation from section 24-121A3, along with the associated conditions as outlined in staff's report and as modified by applicant exhibit number 1, and as further modified by the following. Condition 1A shall be revised as read into the record by staff. Condition 8 shall be revised as read into the record by staff. Condition number 10 shall be revised as read into the record by staff. Condition 8B shall remain as outlined in the original staff report. And let's see, I'm sorry, no revision to condition 25B shall remain as outlined in staff's report. And new conditions 27 and 28 shall be as read into the record by staff. I think I got it all.
I think so. Second.
We have a motion and a second motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Commissioner Geraldo. Staff or council, motion captures everything? No concerns? Okay, well done. Motion and second, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Geraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey. You're on mute, Vice Chair Bailey. There we go.
I said, and the award goes to Commissioner Washington, and I vote aye.
I'm telling you, that was a world record motion there. Well done. Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Gingles. And thank you.
Thank you, members.
Mr. Battle. Thank you for Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Thank you very much. We are now on item 10. Preliminary plan of subdivision 4-22019 Daniels Park. This is a request for a continuance, and we have Mr. Rivera representing the applicant and Mr. Heath. You have something you want to bring us from the staff.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Item number 10 is on the agenda is preliminary plan of subdivision 4-22019 Daniels Park, which proposes 2 lots, 2 single-family detached dwellings, one of which exists, and the applicant originally requested a continuance to the planning board date of January 26, 2023. However, staff received additional information indicating the applicant will request a continuance to the date of February 16, 2023, and staff is in agreement. And the city of College Park intends to have a hearing on the matter, which prompted the need for additional time, and staff recommends approval of the continuance request. And if the application is continued to February 16th, no additional posting will be required. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. Questions for staff? Turn to Mr. Rivera for the applicant. Mr. Rivera.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mr. Heath captured it well. We have agreed to work with the city, obviously, and they have a hearing the week before, and that'll allow us time to work with the city and come back to you on the 16th of February. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, there's nobody else signed up to speak on this matter. What is your pleasure?
I move that we approve the request to continue preliminary plan 4-22019 to February 16th.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Geraldo. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Geraldo.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Mr. Heath, you have one more before us. This is item number 11. It's an extension request for a preliminary plan 4-07050 Livingston Fort Washington. Mr. Jackson is the attorney for the applicant. Mr. Heath, you have a brief staff report for us. Again, this is a 1-year extension that's before us. Mr. Heath.
Yes, thank you. As you stated, it's a 1-year extension request for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-07050 Livingston Fort Washington. And the applicant is proposing a 1-year extension until December 31st, 2023. And all information regarding this extension request has been stated in the staff memo, and staff is recommending approval. If it's the will of the board to make a motion, this will conclude staff's presentation. But if you'd like me to make a more detailed presentation, I'm prepared to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. Any questions for staff, commissioners? Seeing none, I'll turn to the applicant, and then we do have somebody from the public who signed up to speak, but we'll start with the applicant. Mr. Jackson. Anything you want to add?
Good afternoon, Chair, board members. Paul Jackson from the law offices of Shipley and Horn on behalf of the applicant. We are in agreement with staff report and agreement with the recommendation for approval of the extension of the validity period. So we're asking the board to approve the request of the validity period for the preliminary plan of subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any questions for the applicant, commissioners? Seeing none, let's open this up to the public. We have one person who signed up to speak. We have a David Owens, Fort Washington Forward. Mr. Owens, you are on the line. You have up to 3 minutes to speak, and the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself, name and address for the record.
Yeah, good afternoon, Commissioner Shapiro. Thank you very much for having me in, for the board, the planning board as well. Dave Owens from Fort Washington Forward, here in obviously Fort Washington. I just wanted to take some time to thank the ownership group, and they've done a really nice job of meeting with residents about this proposed development. We've met a couple of times, and they've been very transparent. So we just appreciate them for doing that. Understanding that doesn't always happen. Fort Washington Forward is in support of this development, and we've done some polling out here that reveals that the residents as well are in support of this and this development, and really any development in this area that raises the aesthetics of Fort Washington. The inventory out here, a lot of the inventory has sort of surpassed its aesthetic relevance, if you will. So we're really happy to see what they've recommended thus far. We like the mention of crosswalks on Gunpowder Drive, and we appreciate that, along with the bike racks in the development itself. What we did not see, and what we wanted to kind of bring up for discussion as soon as possible, was discussion of pedestrian and cycling access along Livingston Road and the Service Road. Those are two areas of access that will be, primary to this development. And right now, neither one is pedestrian or cycling accessible. And so we wanted to make sure that we brought up the importance of the discussion to have maybe some markings along those roads, sharrows, additional lighting along those roads, because again, right now they're not very accessible by pedestrians or cyclists. So, we did not see, and if we did miss it, then we apologize, a spot there for electric vehicles in the actual development. So we think that's important as well. We've got a younger demographic that's moving to Fort Washington. And in our polling, we see that is something that they're attracted to. So, but overall, I just want to continue to reiterate how much we appreciate the work that the ownership group has done. We look forward to working with them as we continue to see this through, and we appreciate them letting us be part of the process.
Great, thank you, Mr. Owens. And so, Mr. Jackson, first of all, I heard the kind words toward your client, which is nice to hear from Mr. Owens. Though what's before us is simply a one-year time extension. There are a number of issues that Mr. Owens brought up, and it sounds like there's going to be some time for you to continue to work with the community and address some of these issues. So even with a head nod, we'll assume that you've heard loud and clear the concerns in the community, but also the support as well.
Yes, I heard about the pedestrian and cycling issues and the electric car. I'll speak with the team about it and let them know.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks again, Mr. Owens. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Owens? Nothing. Again, thank you for taking the time to come speak. There's nobody else before us on this matter. I'll close the hearing and I'll turn it back to you all. Commissioners, what's your pleasure on this extension request?
I move that we approve the one-year extension for preliminary plan 4-07050, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Thank you, Mr. Heath. I believe that concludes all the items for today. Mr. Hunt, any further business before us?
Mr. Chairman, no additional business items are before the planning board today. Thank you all.
Thank you. And commissioners, unless there's any objections, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for your time.
Have a good afternoon.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Good job.